name?
DiTimona.
DiTimona. Wonderful. Thank you, DiTimona. And Mr. Yoder, I know you are on as well. You will be given an opportunity to speak. We will call on you when that opportunity presents itself. So you can keep your microphone muted until that point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we are live. I would like to, I guess we're not calling a meeting to order, but we do have a demolition clearance hearing at 6:30 p.m. this day, the first day of February 2023. I would like to turn this meeting over to our solicitor, Mr. McTiernan, to walk us through this hearing process.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Robert McTiernan, the solicitor of Swissvale Borough, and this is the time and place that was set for a demolition hearing involving properties on Noble Street. My main witness this evening is Clyde Wilhelm. Are you present, Chief Wilhelm?
I am.
Chief Wilhelm, in addition to your responsibilities as fire chief, do you have any role with respect to building maintenance and building status in Swissvale Borough?
Yes, I am a certified building code official by the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry and designated as the borough's building code official.
And would you please state for the record, there is a court reporter present, the street addresses and lot and block numbers of the properties that are at?
Yes, there's two properties in question, both owned by the same person. Property number one is 2115 Noble Street, Pittsburgh, PA 15218, and has a block and lot number of 178H182. And the owner is Mbunga Bridget Membo. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Would you spell it for the record, the last name?
Yes, MBEMBO.
Thank you.
And the owner address is 2004 Noble Street in Swissvale. Property two is 2117 Noble Street, block and lot number 178H183, with the same owner and the owner's mailing address.
Now, for purposes of the record, this is a hearing to determine whether it is appropriate for the Borough Council to consider and adopt a resolution authorizing demolition of this property. So prior to this hearing being scheduled, did you take any steps, Mr. Wilhelm, to establish not only the record owners, but anyone who might have an economic or property interest in these two properties?
We did. A title search was performed, and we will introduce as Exhibit 1 a copy of the title search, which indicated that there were no liens and no mortgages on the property, indicated the owner as such as previously stated, and no tax liens, nothing. Clear title.
Was that a title search for both properties or for just one of them?
It was for both properties, 2115 and 2117 Noble Street.
Okay. And then based on that title search, did you take steps to provide notification to the record owners and anyone with an interest in the property of this hearing this evening, and to provide them of notice of what the basic purpose and effect of this hearing would be?
Yes, we did. We notified the owner via first class and certified mail at both the address on record with the real estate records and the title search, as well as the property addresses in question. And we also notified the Woodland Hills School District, the Allegheny County Treasurer, and the Allegheny County Law Department.
Do you have copies of the notices that were sent to the owner that establish the date, time of the hearing, and the purpose of the hearing?
We do, and they would be introduced as Exhibit 2, copies of all notification letters and the certified cards.
Do you have any basis for believing that the record owner of the property received notice of this hearing this evening? Today's date at 6:30 p.m.
Yes, we do. The individuals present in the meeting, the daughter, Miss Detona, I'm sorry, I didn't write your name down then.
DiTimona, last name is DiTimona.
Miss DiTimona, I had spoken with, who was a daughter and representative of the owner of record. She had called after she received the letter, and also, I believe, spoke with Manager Batchy regarding the notices.
So based on those responses, could you provide council and the mayor and the public who's involved in the hearing with some information or the basis of why the borough has set this demolition hearing and what the current condition of the property is?
Yes, this property has been on the borough's radar for several years, since 2015. The property was previously purchased by an estate, and they held the property and didn't do anything for a period of years, and property continued to deteriorate. We had spoken to the previous owner, who was not able to do anything with the property. We actually previously held a demolition clearance hearing on August of 2018. And on September 5th, 2018, council had previously determined that the properties were a public nuisance and approved the demolition. The borough did not receive enough funding to demolish all the buildings approved in that batch of properties, and they were spared from demolition at that time. However, the previous owner had listed the properties for sale, and we had received numerous requests during that period of 2018 about information related to the buildings and the demolition status, et cetera, et cetera. So because of me receiving several inquiries of people interested in purchasing it, I had prepared a letter, which will be entered as Exhibit 3, that basically memorialized conversations with the then owner, Levon Mislitz. And basically the letter said this letter is to memorialize previous conversations regarding the property situated at 2115-2117 Noble Street in the borough of Swissvale. This office has received dozens of calls requiring about the status of these buildings, and various questions have been presented by prospective buyers regarding the condition and permitted uses. Furthermore, many persons are inquiring, were not aware that these buildings were under code violations and slated for demolition. For the best interest of all parties, the borough is requesting that any person purchasing these properties first provide the attached affidavit acknowledging the following relevant facts. On August 29th, 2018, a public hearing was conducted at which testimony was taken regarding the condition of subject properties. On September 5th, 2018, Swissvale Borough Council had determined, based on information presented, that these buildings were a public nuisance and a threat to the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of the community. And in accordance with Chapter 10, Part 1 of the Swissvale Borough Code, thereby approved the demolition of these properties for the following reasons. They were listed vacant and/or abandoned blighted property, dilapidated structure with structural damage and deficiencies, unsafe for and unfit for human habitation, and a dangerous and nuisance structure on the premises. And it also indicated that we had a request for bids for the demolition of these buildings, the request for bids for the demolition of these buildings are being released and advertised in January of 2019 and tentatively awarded February 6, 2019. Unless otherwise approved by council, these buildings are slated to be demolished by June of 2019. These buildings have been declared unfit for human habitation by the borough's code official. These buildings have various and significant code deficiencies, require substantial rehabilitation to meet the code requirements for use and occupancy. And additionally, that the work requires building permits and plans. And the work required on these buildings must be in compliance with the Pennsylvania Uniform Construction Code. This requires plans and specifications prepared and approved by a licensed design professional to be submitted for a building permit. Lastly, these buildings are in the commercial business district, and in accordance with the borough zoning ordinance, only residential above commercial use is permitted, and the first floor of these buildings are not permitted to be used for residential use. Should you have any additional questions or concerns, feel free to contact me.
And Chief Wilhelm, did you receive any confirmation from the current owner that they were aware of and accepted the conditions in this letter? And could you introduce any documentary evidence you have of that?
Yes, the current owner of record chose to purchase the property in October of 2020. And they provided an affidavit, which will be entered as Exhibit 4. 2 copies of the notarized affidavit, one for each property, that basically said, I am Mbruga Membo, hereby represent myself as the purchaser of the property located at 2115 and 17 Noble Street with the parcel IDs, situated in the borough of Swissvale, and acknowledge receipt of the letter dated December 19th from the borough of Swissvale identifying that the property is in violation of various codes and has been declared a public nuisance in accordance with Chapter 10, Part 1 of the Swissvale Borough Code. It further states that I hereby acknowledge that upon transfer of the deed, I assume all responsibility for repair and abatement of said violations prior to occupancy of any currently vacant unit or dwelling on said property. In the case that any unit or dwelling is currently occupied, I acknowledge that all repairs or abatement of violations shall be completed in a timely manner. And I understand that failure to complete the repairs or abate said violations may result in violations of various ordinance 8906, 90-8, 10-1, 10-2 et al. Of the Borough Swissvale Code and subject me to fines and penalties in accordance with these ordinances. These were submitted prior to the release of the lien letters and other closing documents for the property. And also we had a conversation during that period of time, which I believe was with the daughter, asking, what's a reasonable amount of time, and basically conveyed that, the reality is if the funding becomes available, that the borough will demolish the properties if they're not repaired or abated by that time. And that was in October of 2020, which is 2 years and two years, 3 months ago.
And Mr. Wilhelm, in the interim period, have there been any steps? Well, have you had an opportunity to observe the property over this interim period up until today?
I'm sorry.
You had a chance to be familiar with what's happened at the property from that date until today.
Yes, we to date, there's been no building permits applied for to rehabilitate these properties. I did inspect the properties as part of this process again, after being directed by the manager to have the clearance hearings again, to move forward with the demolition. The buildings are secured. I have some photos here that will be introduced as exhibits of this current state of the condition of the exterior of the building. I was not aware of any changes to the interior of the building, but have since been made aware that I received a copy of a engineer's report with some photos showing that the whole interior of the building has been gutted down to studs and floor joists, and is completely gutted right now as it sits.
Would you introduce photographs of the building that you're familiar with, that you have personal knowledge of, and explain the current condition of the property based on those photographs?
There's Exhibit 5 will be photos of the property current state. These are 11 photos in total. This photo is the front of the properties that shows the two storefronts as they currently sit. This was taken on the 30th, I believe, Tuesday. You will see indicated is the postings from also of the letters on the door of 2117, and you also see it on 2115. The last time we were inside these buildings was 2018. If you notice, there's a plaque on there with a single slash that says 2018 no trespassing. That was placed by the fire department, meaning that the interior conditions were dangerous and enter with caution if there was a fire or emergency. And again, that was it. The last time we were inside was in 2018. This is the top corner, which they really couldn't see because it's been overcast, but there's still a lot of vines and weeds on the building. And again, it's winter, so there's no leaves or anything on there, but they come back each spring and summer. This is the front of 2115, again, just showing the placard that we had posted there in 2018. Actually, we posted it in 2015. It was re-inspected in 18. This is a side of the building facing the Dixon Street side, showing the condition of the building. You can see that the lower windows have plywood over them. The upper windows are broken. Here's a close-up picture of it. Top window, the glass has been broken out. This is in the rear of the building. The windows have been broken. This is the rear of the building from the alley perspective. There's an unimproved alleyway in the back. And again, you can't really, these are the trees and some other vines and stuff that are there. They cleared some of it out, but there's still a significant amount. Here's another picture of the rear of 2117 showing the condition of the rear deck and the stairs, as well as the vines and some other shrubbery. There is a bathtub sitting in the back. If you look here, I'm presuming that looks like it was a rodent living underneath that concrete there that's bored towards the bottom. Probably a groundhog. Here's a mattress in the back of the building that is in the back of 2117. And again, these pictures were taken on Tuesday.
Now, go ahead, Mr. Wilhelm. I was going to ask about the interior, but if you have anything else to say about the exterior, I would ask you to talk about the interior from the evidence you had from your observation originally and what you've learned, and then we can talk generally about the condition of the entire building and your recommendations.
Well, what I am going to show you is pictures from 2018. It's not the current state, but I want to indicate that there's been some, significant water damage inside. that most likely caused them to completely gut the properties. But this was the basement of 2115. And the relevance here is, if you notice along this back wall, you'll see the upper part of that wall is kind of missing. And there's a lot of water infiltration. There was a few inches of mud. If you look at the furnace area and look at the chair in front of that, you can see that some of the legs are even under the mud and water. And if you look at the top, there was water back then in 2018, literally dripping off the light fixtures, and all the white stuff on the wood is more or less, it was mold and also fungus starting to grow. Here's another picture a little closer up of the water dripping off of the gas pipes inside. And again, the mold on the structure. And if you look here above the hot water heater, you'll see that white stuff. That was actually fungus starting to grow, degrading the floor joists. Here is some pictures of inside prior to them gutting it that showed the water infiltration, various locations on the top floor where the plaster and lath and the ceiling had come down. This was an entry door going into 2117 that shows the mold and the water infiltration, the wallpaper peeling off the walls. That was down on the first floor. This is what the rear had looked like at the time, what it looks like when it's in full bloom and not cut back. I don't have a picture from last summer, but there's still a lot of vegetation back there. They did do a job actually of clearing a lot of that out, but there's still a reasonable amount back there that will most likely come back in the spring.
Now, have you received any evidence or information concerning anything else about the building that might have taken place? Have you testified you haven't been requested to issue any building permits or anything authorizing any kind of construction? Do you have any knowledge of any developments with respect to the interior of the building?
The only knowledge I have, I was able to look through one of the windows and see that it was gutted down to the studs. And again, I did receive a engineer's report via email that they had emailed to Mr. Batchy, but it really only talks about the some cracked block brick walls and gives a method to do a repair that's using Simpson devices that aren't in compliance with the manufacturer's recommendations. But we have received no plans or building permit application for the rehabilitation. This is a commercial property. Under the Pennsylvania Uniform Construction Code, we would require a complete set of architectural plans for the upgrades, including the wiring, mechanical, the plumbing, all that stuff. And we've never received any of that information or request over the last 2+ years.
Well, before I ask my next series of questions to the chief, I would ask that the record include exhibits 1 through 6, which would be all of the documents that the chief has testified about. Moving forward, chief, could you have an opinion on whether this property, both properties, 2115 and 2117, represent a threat to the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of the borough?
Yes, I believe under the definitions of the ordinance, the fact that it is a blighted property, it's been completely gutted, it's been sitting there for years, it's not structurally stable without repairs. It has been secured, but it's easily able to be broken into, and that's happened at various vacant properties throughout the borough, including this one. Prior to them purchasing it, it was broken into numerous times because the borough had gone out and boarded it up. And, it's a potential fire hazard. I know that there is a sale going through of the property next door at the old Cleaners, which was another blighted property that the land bank had taken. And I believe a contracting firm is allegedly moving in there with a showroom and have their home office. And these two buildings are, again, unmaintained and vacant adjacent to those buildings. So they're blighted. They fall under the definition of blighted property as well.
Chief, you mentioned that the building is a fire hazard, and I take it that's because of the condition of the building itself. But does the fact that it's been vacant for so long and has been broken into, does that relate in any way to the health and safety, and specifically with respect to fires in your experience as a fire chief?
Yes, as a matter of fact, as an example, 2 weeks ago, we found a vacant building that had a door broken into in the back while we were on a call at 2 doors up. And we checked it, called the police, and went in. And there, at some point, somebody tried to light the building on fire. We found papers and a cardboard that was burnt. in a completely, vacant and gutted structure that was under construction and the owners walked away. We've seen cases of that here in the borough in the past. And, the fear is because there's no wall covering, there's no drywall or gypsum or plaster. If there is a fire in there, it's going to take off very quickly. There is another 2 buildings that are attached to those 2 buildings to the right side of the structure, which could also catch fire if that happened as well. And we do have experience with that. I mean, that's one of the reasons that we try to eliminate as many of these abandoned and or run down or blighted properties as possible.
Chief, what about the environmental factors? Is there anything about the building that you know of, and also a building in this condition, apart from the fire hazard, which is significant, but environmental conditions inside the building that could represent a health hazard?
Yes, if and when they do this, there has to be some mold testing and mold abatement. All of the interior structure, including the joists and the studs, would all have to be sealed. And, generally we require testing afterwards to make sure that the mold abatement is taken care of. I don't know the condition of all the individual studs now because I haven't seen them in 5 years, but I could tell you 5 years ago that the joist and the stud were in pretty deplorable condition. And it's going to require—
Well, let me separate those 2 points. The mold, do you have any personal experience that led you to believe there was mold, either from what you saw or your personal experience about the mold?
Yes. The last time I was in there, I had to get a prescription for antibiotics because I got a sinus infection from the mold and I had a mask on. Previously in the summers, when you would walk by there, you could actually smell the mold on the sidewalk. Again, I don't know how it's improved or not improved since they gutted the building, but I can tell you in years past that it's been a significant problem.
And what about the second item you just mentioned? Is that a separate problem with respect to the stability of the structure?
Yeah, the individual floor joists would have to be checked to make sure they didn't deteriorate, because when you have mold and fungus infiltration into lumber, it deteriorates the tensile strength and the stability of that structure. And that would have to be handled, through the engineer, as well as, taken care of if a building permit was issued and they rehab the buildings.
And I take it, Chief, from your testimony that there's been no documentation from any professional or any skilled tradesperson in this area of mold removal or reinforcement of the structure inside that would indicate any type of work has been done to alleviate those conditions. You have no evidence.
I have no evidence that any work has been done to alleviate those conditions.
Now, again, not to belabor this, Chief, but there are other environmental hazards that come with an abandoned building that's in the condition that you just explained with respect to, well, maybe you can explain with respect to pests or other potential threats to the public and the residential safety.
Yeah, we usually end up with rodents, skunks, groundhogs, sometimes rats and other things in the nearby neighborhood. A lot of times they will live in buildings that are not occupied nearby other buildings that are, so that they have food source available. I don't have any particular indication other than the one infiltration I showed in the one picture that showed underneath the concrete dugout, again, because I have not been inside the buildings themselves. So I can't answer to that.
The Chief, I think you've covered things pretty well. Is there anything you would like to add about the condition of the building before I ask you what your recommendation to the council is with respect to what action they should take on this building? Anything else you want to add before I ask you for your recommendation?
Well, there is one thing that I'm going to look at. There was an indication from the structural engineer that there was starting to be cracking in the brick wall that I was not able to see from the exterior. So that is in this structural engineer report that they provided that said that it needed to be repaired. And I'd have to dig into that a little deeper. But as we know from buildings, from water infiltration causing buildings collapse, which was experienced even at the municipal building, that in itself presents another hazard that could happen at any time. We don't know when that's going to happen.
And finally, Chief, do you have a recommendation based on your experience as fire chief and your responsibilities as a certified building officer on what action council should take with respect to these two properties, 2115 and 2117 Noble Street?
My recommendation would be the same as I gave in 2018, that the buildings have been remained unimproved and are derelict and abandoned and blighted and should be demolished if funds are available.
Before we turn to other witnesses, Chief, I would ask if council or the mayor have any questions for you before we turn it to the public and see if they have any questions.
I do.
ahead.
Chief, I'm curious. I understand a lot of this damage is from water infiltration. Is there any evidence that any action has been taken to stop that water infiltration? Like any signs of a new roof or anything like that?
I did not see any signs from a new roof from the street level, and we require a permit if a new roof was put on, and we received no permits for these properties to make any repairs.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions from the elected officials, do any members of the public have any questions for the chief? Hearing none, we would ask are there any members of the public who want to speak in favor of this recommendation to demolish the property? And if so, would you give your name and identify your address and make your comments? If there are no comments with respect to supporting the demolition, are there any comments from either the owner or the owner's representative, and then any members of the public who wish to oppose this recommendation to demolish?
Yes.
I think you've already said what your name is, but if you wouldn't mind for the court reporter, give your name and spell it and identify your address and your relationship to the owner or the neighborhood.
Okay. I don't know if I'm on video or not, but could you see me?
are.
Oh,
Yes.
Hi, sorry. Yes, my name is Jocelyn Ditumona. I'm here in a meeting with my mother, Ambunga Mbembo.
Spell your name. Spell your name.
Sorry, Jocellyne.
Last name.
Ditumona. D as in dog, I as in ink, T as in Tom, U as in umbrella, M as in Mary, O as in Oscar, N as in Nancy, A as in apple.
And your address, ma'am?
My address is at the current, my address 2004 Noble Street, Pittsburgh, PA 15218.
Thank you. Would you provide your counsel to the, your testimony to counsel and the mayor?
Oh, I don't have a counsel.
No, I mean, provide what you want to say to the elected officials.
I'm sorry. I'm going to speak on behalf of my mother just because she has a language barrier. So, but Mama Pisambote. Okay. Hi, sorry. But speaking on this case, first we would like to apologize for this incident. This is not, like I said, we live in 2004 Noble Street, so we're on the same street as the property. This is not the first property that we worked on. When we moved into Swissville, 2004 Noble Street was a complete disaster, and we fixed it up, and now we reside in it, and we actually have a business also that is here in the Swissville borough. So we're happy to be residents of Swissville. Not only are we resident, but we're also put into the community as business owners. As far as the property, my mom did purchase it in 2020. I think what also had happened here, it's also because, it's also because of lack of communication that was communicated with my mom, with the realtor. I wasn't the one that, when my mom purchased the place, my older sister was the one who was guiding her. So I came in kind of later in the process. Just because of schooling, I wasn't able to help her out the way it's supposed to. Now, when the property was purchased in 2020, we did go ahead full gear. We started with the demolishing of the property. Sorry if I pronounce words wrong. But we did that. We made sure that we gutted everything, just because, like the pictures that the chief showed, there was water. So we wanted to see where the water was actually coming from. So as we gutted, we're able to see the roof. The roof was in good condition. We had somebody that sealed in a couple cracks that was on the roof. It did not need a full repair. We did that. Moving forward, the plan was to get it started in full gear. But because of the COVID, because of the inflation and the money issue, we were kind of in a bad place, because we are also working in another property here in Swissville on 2014 Collingwood. We did end up getting in a situation where we had a bad contractor, and because of that also, it pushed things back, and our money was wrong, because we were supposed to start there and then move into the two properties that we had there. Back in November, after Thanksgiving. I did stop in a Swissville bar, and I actually had a quick talk with the chief, and the chief did say to me that, when are you guys going to start with the property? And I showed him that sometime at the beginning of this year, we're going to put everything in and get it started, because now we have the funds that came in. I wish I could even bring a copy of the funds that showed that we have the funds. What stopped us, it was the funds. But we did keep the property clean. We have paperwork from an engineer showing that the structure is in good position. There's a little crack that even the chief did not see it before. We sealed the property so nobody will go in. We sealed it pretty good because chief can't even go in there. But as far as that, it was basically bad timing and money-wise that wasn't prepared well, just because we had to backtrack a little bit. As I can assure you that we are ready for full gear. In January, before I even got the letter, I stopped in the office to get 2 applications for the demolition, for the building permit. They gave me this right here. The lady actually wrote on it that we needed 2 structural drawings, 2 stamped architectural drawings that needed to be submitted for the 2 buildings, because it is a commercial building. We're working with an architect, but they told us we cannot get a permit now, because that's when they stated that the letter was sent out saying that building has to be demolished. So as for now, we can't do nothing. We have everything in gear. We have a contractor, because my other property is pretty much done. So we have that contractor we've been working with. He's a good contractor. And I have the report of the building as a state that it is. If I have to get a mold inspector, because we did treat the mold prior, but I don't have it in a report because it wasn't something that I thought I needed to present to the borough as a report, but we can get a report as that. I have a pest control service that come out, make sure they spray the building down so there won't be no pests, no insects or anything like that. We haven't done as much work as the exterior, but we have kept dated as far as cleaning it, cleaning the street. We make sure that is clean. And oh, excuse me, I'm a little nervous. But as far as that, as far as the window that was cracked, my contractor and I, we those are the things that we wanted to do it closer to end, just because there's no reason for us to put brand new windows on the top and it's not endangering anybody in the case of it being damaged. So those were things that we wanted to do it step by step. But the first step that we did, we really took our time. The house was in very bad condition. So I was like, it was as is. There was furniture, there was tons of things. It took us like 6 containers to like get rid of everything. So we did invest a lot on that too. And I just would like to be given the opportunity. My mother and I would like to be given the opportunity, if we have to submit financial proof of us having the funds to have this work done, we would. And we were asking even 90 days for us to be given the opportunity to get the permits, get the work started. And we can assure you, just like we did with 2004 Noble Street property, we can surely do the same with 2115 and 2117 Noble Street. And as I said, we just about to be done with 2014 Collingwood, and I can show pictures of how it was before and how it is right now. I believe we are good assets to the Swissville Borough. We are good resident. We have no tax lineage. We paid our taxes, so there's no lien into the house. That's how much we've already invested into the property. It was just the timing was not a good timing that we thought, and our planning didn't go as well based on the job that we were doing with the contractor and losing money on certain things. But I can assure you, if we were given the permission, we can submit our financial means as far as getting this project done. And we have contractors that are ready to do the work, but everything is on hold because we can't get a permit under the circumstances that the house is put on the list for demolition.
Thank you. Thank you. Before we turn to other witnesses, I'm going to ask if the elected officials might have some questions for you. Is there anyone among council that has questions for the witness?
But
I apologize for my tardiness. So you may have addressed some of these questions. I know you just went through a list of things that you guys have done to make the premises safe. The question that I have is, when did you start doing these things?
The demo, I believe we got the property 2020. The demo, we did it around April of 2021, around that time, because I know the temperature was like springy-ish. So it took us about, the demo took about like a month to do. Or less than that, a couple of weeks, I believe it was.
Okay, so you guys acquired the property in 2020?
We acquired
then-
it November of 20, like in November, le 2020, like in November. Yeah, I have to check on the paper, but I know it was the very end of of 2020.
Okay,
Mhm.
and you did the demolition to the property in 2021?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. And then some of the things that you say you've done to it, when did you do those things to it?
As far as, can you, like the pest control or?
Yeah, you
Oh.
you mentioned like you guys got rid of mold and pest control and all
Right,
that.
during the
stuff.
demolition, it was done prior, like after the demo was done, the pest, they come in and spray. I think we got all kits or something. I have to check on because they do it seasonal. They'll come in, they'll spray and do stuff like that. Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Do you guys currently reside in Swissvale or
Oh,
is
yes, we
this?
do. We're literally on the same street. We're in 2004. So my mom and I, we reside upstairs, and downstairs we have a boutique, an African boutique downstairs. So yes, African boutique and braiding.
I came to your business before. Are you guys on Noble Street?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Ah, hi.
Hello, hello. Thank you.
I apologize, you guys.
Bye.
Hi, I definitely have frequented at your business before. Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so what is the status of the building now? I mean, you demoed it. What's going on with it
Right.
now?
So as I stated, back in November, I believe, I did stop in Swissville, and the officer chief had approached me because I came in to drop off paperwork for a building that a building, I should call it, or a place that we're working on, Collingwood, which is also in Swissville. And the chief did mention to me, like, when is the work going to get started? And I told the chief it's going to get started around beginning of January. I should get everything situated. The hardest part of it is that my mom can't really take over all this work. I'm in school. So what made it worse is that because I'm going to Duquesne for nursing program, and I'm in a 12-month nursing program for a bachelor, second-degree bachelor. So it has been just hard to pick up and all of that. So I just wanted to, that's what I took that break in order to just focus on one building. Let's get done with 2014 Collingwood, and then let's focus on this. And that's what I explained to Chief, like we're moving forward to that. When I came in January to inquire about to pick up the paperwork, and I explained to them, because they thought I came in for 2014 Collingwood. I was like, no, I just want to get paperwork. And they told me that it's been pulling to, it's been put in a list of demolition. They can't just give me, I can't, there's no point because they can't give me a permit on it. I can't work on it because it's on the list of demolition. So right now we've just been on hold. Like I stated, that we have the funds and I can bring in the proof of funds to show that if I'm given 90 days, that work can be done into the building. We secured it so that it's not, a threat to the population or the residents of Swissville. As far as like breaking into, we closed everything, we cleaned the outside, we cleaned the deck, we cleaned the back, just so I can at least look presentable.
Okay, so all right, so work was done on it in 2021.
Yes, ma'am.
So there was nothing done. Was there nothing done to it in 2022?
2022 was just upkeep of the outside, upkeep of the pest control. That was what was done. And it wasn't so much based on it. I have to take an accountability. It's just because I put so much on myself. I was working with a contractor who was supposed to be done with 2014 and move forward to 2115 and 2117 Collingwood. And it was just, we had a stagger of the contractor that I hired for one job kind of screwed us up. And then now it's like finding another contractor, dealing with that contractor to finish that other job to move into this other job. Because I was actually failing from school, just dealing with all of that. So I had put on hold on it. Where it was like, okay, let's at least clean the outside. Let me focus on this. Let me finish with what I'm doing, and then let them finish with, the location that we're working on right now, which is 2014 Collingwood Avenue. And it's looking
Okay.
beautiful. We're getting there.
Okay, so then there's a couple of other buildings you guys own in Swissville.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so one of the problems that we're having, I'm just going to be completely honest with you, Jocelyn. And one of the problems that we're having with, investors who purchase buildings in Swissville is that they purchase them for investment opportunities, but don't do anything with it.
Right.
And what happens is we now have vacant, abandoned buildings that nothing is happening with them.
Okay.
Of course, it does something in terms of the overall view of our neighborhood. There's, of course, the safety issues, but we have a big problem with the fact that people just buy up stuff because they get it on the, the low end of the spectrum, because folks normally you acquire it because the property taxes haven't been paid on it. So you're able to get it through some type of foreclosure or tax sale. But then the problem is that the investor doesn't do anything with it.
Right.
And so we got a problem because we got other business owners, we got other residents in the neighborhood that are like, what are you going to do about this? Because this is creating an issue in our property, in our neighborhood, and they want us to do something about it. Now, I would definitely say the difference between you guys and some of these other investors, they don't even live here. They don't even live in the state. And their property taxes are not paid up to date.
We paid all of them.
So I love the fact that you guys are right here. We can have access to you, because we don't have that with some of these other investors. And some of these other investors, they're not paying their property taxes either. So they're not doing anything with the buildings. The property taxes are just, I'm surprised those buildings haven't gone up for a tax sale either. And we can't get in touch with them because they don't live here.
Right.
I know you said that you put a lot on yourself. I understand. As a mom, wife, councilwoman, and everything else I got going on over here, I can definitely understand the fact that sometimes life happens. But what we need to know is a concrete plan.
We have that in place. We do.
We need to see. We need the financing associated with the building plan associated with it. We need to see that. Unfortunately, because we did a demolition hearing not too long ago, and the individual owned multiple properties. We could not get in touch with this person, but the person showed up at the demolition clearance hearing with a lot of promises. And once again, I have to say that it is different from your situation, because that individual don't live here, does not actually have a business in Swissville, and their taxes were not paid up to date either. But there was no real clear assurances that the promises that were going to be made were actually going to be carried out. So I love the fact that you say you had the finances and the things that you want to do, but if you could submit, and Mr. McTiernan is although I'm an attorney, I'm not a solicitor, so I'm not the attorney for the borough. So I'm going to, rely on Mr. McTiernan in terms of what is the proper procedure for us to receive your concrete plans in terms of what your course of action is with this particular property. There's other properties are not a part of the demolition clearance hearing, so you're not obligated to submit anything about those. But I would highly encourage you to have a similar format, so we're not back here,
right,
for your other properties.
Absolutely. Thank you for the statement. Thank you. Like I said, we have kept up with our taxes, making sure that we stay up on a certain part. And I did take more than I could chew, absolutely. And like I said, moving forward, I can provide all the information that you need. that the council need as far as what is our plan within 90 days, within 120 days, like step by step, my contractor can break it down. And then if all fails, then the court, I can bring everything back to you guys, and that would be my bad for the second time. And I'm pretty sure I don't want to put myself in that situation at all.
Do any of the other elected officials, I'm sorry, were you finished? I was going to ask whether anyone had any other questions before. We have another witness, and before, I think the chief might want to comment, and also he could reiterate some of the requirements for repairing this building. I think Mrs. Scales was asking, things like state-approved plans for commercial property, things like that he could cover. So is there anybody else among the elected officials that wishes to ask the witness any questions before we move to the other witness?
Yes, I would. Jocelyn, thank you. Excuse me. Thank you for coming on and being transparent with us, or I should say the name of your business, Imela, which is thank you in Igbo. I'm aware of that. So yes, thank you. Yeah. So thank you for coming on and sharing your side of the story and your hopes. So I'll keep my question brief. You said 90 days is what you need. By the end of those 90 days, what would you want to see completed on those two properties?
By the end of the 90 days, I definitely want to check off the list of what has put us in a situation of being demolished, as far as, starting with now Chief added the mold, but it wasn't on the list of what I got here. But we basically, to take us off the list of demolition, of the building being demolished. But that's the biggest part. But moving forward, we already had the plan of having the building done. It's with this country, it's all about money. If you have the money and the right workers, you can get the things done. But like I said, it's definitely making sure that the buildings are not a threat to the resident. It's not a health hazard, none of that. And work on the exterior, continue working the interior step by step. That's our goal.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Bill.
Hi, I was curious, you had mentioned that you had gotten a structural engineer's report, and I wasn't sure how recently that was.
The structural report is dated, he dated it, the report, that it says January 19th.
Of this year?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize until tonight that your family was the owners of this property. I do mention that I have a business across the street from where you live, and you did a very nice job with the property.
Thank you. Thank you. We hope to do the same with these two buildings too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I can't see his hand is raised. If not, I would ask, I think there's another witness present, and then I would close the hearing with any comments or information that Chief Wilhelm would want to provide before we close the hearing. Is there another witness present? Would you please identify yourself and give your address for the court reporter?
I figure you're talking about me. I'm Calvin Yoder at 1605 Miriam Street. I'm a member of the Swissvale Historical Committee, but I'm here as just a personal comment. So just my take on it is the Noble Street Central Business District is about 30 storefronts, about half of which are mixed-use two-story buildings. It's generally understood that mixed-use buildings have a lot to offer as far as benefits for a central business district. Having traffic both during the day and at night deters crime and things like that. And it's a building type that isn't common for new construction at this point. If the buildings at hand are demolished, the most likely replacement is an empty lot. But if someone were to acquire the lots and build, it would be a chain type business, putting in a focused commercial building and moving away from the mixed use, which is an important aspect of our business district. And with such a small business district, we're losing a substantial portion of the available mixed use buildings if these buildings are demolished. The buildings at hand obviously need to be addressed. They're in bad shape. but exploring other options, and especially I was unfamiliar with sort of the ownership of this building. And so to see that it's a Swissvale resident who's engaged with the building, I come from a preservation background, and so I'm used to dealing with things where the owner wants to tear it down as well, and it's fighting against everybody. But to have here the owner is engaged with the building, wants to do right by it, and it's buildings that are in the place where every building we lose from Swissvale's commercial district could be the tipping point where it's no longer viable to get a vibrant central business district because there just isn't the architectural log to support it. There's not enough mixed use buildings that can keep this use going. And so I would really like to see the borough explore their options with these buildings and do what they can to preserve the central business district, and just follow through with alternatives. I know in the past, I think there's been a weak point for the borough. I've talked about salvage with the borough building and knock on follow up on it. We talked about the certified local government was a recommendation from the historical committee that was never followed up on. And so I'd like to see the borough do more to try and mothball and preserve buildings versus immediately go towards demolition with them. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. The elected officials have any questions or comments for Mr. Yoder? If not, I would
actually, I'll ask one. Just out of curiosity, this is somewhat tangential to this, but Mr. Yoder, given your experience and your conversation around this, what would be your perspective of the borough taking on something like conservatorship? Is that something that you would be in favor of to try to help some of these dilapidated structures or structures before they get dilapidated, or is that do you see that as an overreach from the borough?
I think it's definitely a valid approach to circulate buildings through a land bank type system, get them out of the hands. It's more applicable, especially with like absentee owners and things like that, like Councilwoman Scales was talking about. But definitely, I think the borough should be doing what it can to keep buildings in use, because we have a density here that new construction is never going to touch upon again. We're never going to build as dense as Swissvale is now, just because modern construction practices, it's impossible. And so we should be doing what we can to preserve that density versus every demolition is forever reducing our potential.
Thank you.
Anybody else? If there are no further questions or comments from Mr. Yoder, I would ask the chief if he has any final comments, or especially in response to Council Member Scales' questions. I think you touched on some of it, Chief, but what the process would be in terms of next steps if demolition is not the option. If you would provide that.
Absolutely. There's three brief points I'd like to mention and try to keep this as quick as possible. One is we don't withhold building permits because a property is scheduled to be demolished or on a demolition list. And I did not have that conversation with the lady that was here testifying. And I just want to clarify that for the record. My personal choice and our mission would rather have the buildings rehabilitated than demolished. It's always been that way here since I've been in charge of code enforcement. Secondly, it's obviously the council's prerogative on how to handle this, but if we can save the buildings, I'd be all for that. But I'm not sure that we'd be here having this conversation if we didn't start this process again, because it has been, it's been a while since any work has been done. Now we know everything, and council can use their discretionary authority to base their decision. And lastly, as far as a building permit application, we do require architectural drawings and schematics and specifications for the work that's done. This is a high-level, complete gut and renovation of the building. This is not a minor thing. They have to be designed of how you're laying out the whatever the rooms are, what the occupancies are, with the electrical, the plumbing, the mechanical, and that all has to be submitted and reviewed by a certified plan reviewer and approved in order for the work to be done. And we'll say that and clarify that again here. And that's just not Swissvale. That's the state law under the Uniform Construction Code, which we adopt and enforce locally instead of you having to deal with Harrisburg, which is a nightmare. So those are the three comments that I wanted to make. And I don't have anything else to add.
If there's nothing further, Mr. Ansel, I would recommend that we close the hearing at this time, and council can consider the evidence before it makes its decision on this matter. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McTiernan. Thank you, Chief Wilhelm. Thank you to Mr. DeTimona and Mr. Yoder for your contributions as well. So this hearing is now closed for the demolition. And Mr. McTiernan, are we able to just continue with the next item on our pre-meeting agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, Sarah, would you be willing to let Mr. Summersgill in if he is in the waiting room? Okay, so just so everyone understands where we're moving, yes, our official meeting has not begun yet. We are currently doing the boards and commissions interviews that the two individuals that were not able to make it last week. We are going to interview them, and then we will begin the public meeting following that. So first up, we have Mr. Kurt Summersgill, who is an incumbent member of the Shade Tree Committee, and he has reapplied. Mr. Summersgill, I'm going to ask you the question I asked everybody last week, which is to tell us something about yourself and why you wanted to reapply for this position.
All right, I'm off on mute. All right, yeah, I was one of the founding members of the Shade Tree Advisory Committee, and have enjoyed my work there. And I currently spend a lot of time in Frick Park doing volunteer work as an urban eco steward. And I'm also took the tree tender training, which help prune trees, things like that. I've really, I live in Swissvale, but lived in Swissvale for 21 years now. Really want to keep it green and beautiful.
Thank you so much for your service. I always appreciate the work that the Shade Tree Committee does, walking down the street, seeing those new trees planted. I want to open it up to other council members if any other council members have questions for you, Mr. Summersgill.
Mr. Summersgill, I just wanted to say thank you for applying. I see you live over here on I live over on the Regent Square side of Swissvale as well. Did you work at all with Perry Recker on the trail that he worked on at the ends of LeClaire and Macon Street?
I had actually worked on that independently a couple of years ago. There was
Okay.
It's called like an informal trail going down into the park from that part, and had a bunch of things on it that I had removed on my own, and then he has been much more active right there. So yeah, looks good.
Yep. Just want to say thank you for applying.
I have the same words as well, Mr. Summersgill. I want to thank you so much for applying and thank you for your continued service.
You're welcome.
All right, well, Mr. Summersgill, we will be voting on this later tonight when we actually get to our meeting. Regardless of what the decision is, we will be notifying all applicants on that. So thank you so much for your time, taking some time with us tonight. Sorry that you were in the waiting room for a while while we wrapped up the demolition hearing, but glad to see your face and put a face with the name and to have the opportunity to get to know you a little bit more. So thank you for your time.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thanks. Sarah, would you let Mr. Yesko in? So Mr. Well, I'll wait till he comes in. Mr. Yesko, I don't know if you can hear us. If so, if you can unmute. And oh, there, you've unmuted your camera. You able to unmute the audio? So what? Oh, there you go. Hello, Mr. Yesko.
Yeah, I was just on the other computer trying to hook up to the borough council meeting because it's 7:33.
Yes, I apologize. Our demolition hearing went a little long this morning, so thank you for your patience. Sorry that you were in the waiting room for so long. We are as
Do I get a cookie or something?
I wish I could give you a cookie. I have a Kit Kat. You can have my Kit Kat.
Okay.
So Mr. Yesko has applied for the Planning Commission. He also wrote down Shade Tree Commission or Rec Board on there. Mr. Gesko, I'm going to ask you the question that I've asked all other applicants, both last week and tonight, and then I'll invite any other council members to ask questions of you. Mr. Gesko, if you can tell us a little something about yourself and why you were interested in the named positions.
Well, I don't recall about the recreation. I do recall about the tree committee, which I already been contacted by. And this one I tried last week, but it couldn't connect. But anyway, I've been here for what, over 40 some years as a resident of Swissville. I think a few people up there on the board know who I am. Graduate of Robert Morris University, degree in business, Computer Systems Institute, degree in computer languages, taught computer languages, worked for Goodwill Industries, worked as a ABE GED instructor, worked on a county jail, became part of the CDL committee to rewrite the commercial driving license books. And let's see, worked at a couple other jobs. It was worked at a steel mill when I graduated college, and military, 1962 to 66. And then right from there, I went to college. So extensive background, a lot of experience. I have probably about 7 or 8 or 9 or so. I can't even find them anymore. Certificates of completion for plumbing, carpentry, electronics, small engine repair, of course, gardening, and well, trees and things of that nature, design, landscaping and design. So over the last few years, I've kept educating myself over and over because, quite frankly, I couldn't afford people coming in and tearing up my house for what they want. So I learned to do it myself. And that's what I do.
And
so I figured, well, it's time to start giving back to the neighborhood. And, you know, some people recognize me, of course, by reading on nextdoor.com. I do a lot of reviews on there, and people get back to me. I did a presentation a couple of years ago for beautifying that corner there at Church Street. And I was supposed to be contacted by the Rotary Club. They moved the meeting and never contacted me. So I'm involved in that as well with Greg. I called him up and said, I'm interested in doing that. I'm interested to get on a tree committee. Hey, I'll go on anything. I'm retired, so I have time, I have experience, the knowledge, and wisdom, of course.
thank you for sharing. I'd like to open it up if any other council members have or elected officials have any questions for Mr. Yesko.
Don't be afraid. I ain't gonna bite.
Well, Mr. Yesko, I want to thank you so much for your patience and being on time. And I definitely want to thank you so much for your service and for applying to continue to serve the borough of Swissville.
Oh, you're welcome. And what is your name?
Mr. Yesko, my name is Weldy Ann Scales, but I go by Weldy.
Oh, okay. And what questions do you have?
I have none. I just want to thank you for your service.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good that you're thanking servicemen, and I always thank the police and the firemen and the EMTs. You know, we're out there helping out.
Well, Mr. Jesko, thank you so much for your time. Again, I'm sorry for the wait for you to get on. We will be voting on this later in this evening's meeting once we officially start the legislative meeting. All applicants will be contacted, letting them know the outcome of our vote. So you're welcome to tune into the YouTube stream and watch it live, or you will receive a follow-up as well. So I appreciate the time that you've given us.
Okay, well, you have my resume, I'm guessing, right?
We do. Yes, we have your
So
resume and the
whatever
application.
information's on there, you can contact me. Or if you have any other questions, call me on the telephone.
Will do. Thank you very much, Mr. Jesko.
All right, nice talking to you.
You as well.
Bye.
All right. So I want to welcome all attendees and viewers to the Borough of Swissvale regular council meeting for February 1st, 2023. I am going to now call the meeting to order at 7:39 p.m. And let's go through our roll call. Miss Alfonso Wells.
Here.
Mr. Miser.
Here.
Mr. Price.
Here.
Miss Salisbury.
Here.
Miss Scales.
Here.
Miss Stribling.
Here.
Mayor Schwartzwelder.
Here.
Thank you. Let's move to public comment. I believe we have 2 public comments. I see one of them on. I don't know if Mr. Miller has been invited into the room, but we can start with Miss Alexa Lee wants to make a public comment. So Miss Lee, if you are able to unmute, and perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me today. I wanted to talk about passing, sorry, you'll probably hear my dogs in the background. I wanted to talk about passing a local ordinance banning dogs being tied up and left unsupervised in front yards and front porches. This is something I've noticed in the last several months. I walk my dogs for about an hour a day. So, I see what's going on in the neighborhood. And there are several dogs in the area that people just leave chained to their front porch, and they're there, when I start my walk, and then they're there when I get back. So I know that these dogs are being left unsupervised for a long time. And obviously it's really frightening when you're walking down the street and this big dog comes at you barking and snarling and lunging, and you're like hoping that this thin little chain is going to hold them. And, this is an urban area. We're not in the countryside. Lots of people walk to work. Lots of people take the bus. People just enjoy walking around and getting exercise. And it just isn't a pleasant experience, when you have these big, scary dogs coming at you. So it's also obviously really unsafe for the dogs. I have personally found dogs wandering around with the chain still on their neck. So they were obviously left unsupervised and broke loose. And now we have a loose dog in the neighborhood. Plus, of course, there's always the chance that, the chain will break and they'll, end up biting somebody or getting in a fight with another dog. So since this is an unsafe situation, I think this would be a great opportunity for the Borough Council to pass a local ordinance banning people from leaving their dogs chained up and unsupervised in the front of the house, either in the front yard or on the front porch. I called the police. They said there is currently no local ordinance. They said that there's nothing that they can do as long as the dog doesn't seem to be obviously abused or neglected. There's nothing that they can do. So, if we pass an ordinance like this, it would be really easy to enforce it with tickets. You could just take a photo, either the person calling the police to report it could take a photo and send it to the police, or the police could send someone out and take a picture and then mail that picture with the date and the ticket for like $100, $150 to the address. And then that would be a great way to make the community safer and make it more pleasant to walk around the neighborhood.
Ms. Lee, thank you for your comments. Mr. Batchy, can we add this as a discussion item for our agenda setting meeting at the end of the month for us to have a little bit of discussion as council around this issue? That would also provide some time for, I'm not sure which department head that we would put that under, whether it would be a code enforcement issue, whether it would be not really fit anywhere. And Mr. Batchy, maybe you as the manager could take some initiative to someone to do just a little bit of background research to see if there are other like-minded ordinances and other communities that we could kind of learn from to see what else is out there, so that we can we can have a conversation around this.
Yes, we'll take care of that.
Does that seem reasonable for other council members on as well, that we add this to the agenda to talk about at the end of the month? Okay. Ms. Lee, thank you for your inquiry and sharing, and appreciate your willingness to come on our Zoom meeting and tell us a little bit about what you think would make the neighborhood better.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Take care. Sarah, do we have Mr. Miller?
No, there's no one in the waiting rooms.
Okay. All right. So we'll keep moving on to the meeting. So the next item on our agenda would be meet the police. I was informed by Chief Watson that we don't have none of the ones that we have not seen. None of the officers that we have yet to see were available this evening. So we don't have anyone from Meet the Police. So we're going to keep moving on to our council actions. So item 7-A, which council, I just want to make sure that there was an updated agenda that was sent out, because we clumped the clearance hearing as like item number 1 instead of the call to calling the meeting to order. And so if you are following along for the motions, I just want to make sure everyone has the most up-to-date version of that. So just if you don't, it was sent out by Mr. Batchy earlier today.
That's what I was getting ready to ask. Thanks.
Yes. If you want, I can give you an exact time on that email in a moment. Looks like it was
1:15.
Yep.
Is that the one?
No, I have 3:51 p.m. is when it came through.
The last one I have looks like was 1:15, and there was an agenda lumped with the exhibits from the demo hearing.
Yeah, it was after that.
I didn't receive that.
No, I didn't send anything at 3:51. I was on my way home at 3:51.
Oh. Oh, you know what? I apologize. You're right. You're right, Mr. Miser. I'm actually looking at the one from yesterday, 3:51 yesterday.
I see 114. Is that the right?
I think that is the right one. I apologize.
Yeah, 114 is the correct one.
It is. I'm sorry. That was my fault. I was incorrect in that. Thank you, Mr. Miser, for that correction. So I'm telling you to download the right one, and then I'm telling you the wrong one to download from. So I apologize. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, because there have been some moving pieces with numbers and whatnot, like I said, with these demolition hearings and adding the interviews for committees to that agenda. So item 7, everyone should have 7A for council actions minutes. And so I would welcome someone to make a motion for the approval of last month's minutes.
I move to approve the minutes of the January 4th, 2023 council meeting.
I second it.
All right. Ms. Alfonso Wells, I think Mr. Miser undercut you there. The motion is on the table. Is there any conversation around that? Okay, hearing none, let's call the question. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Let's move on to item B, finance.
I move to approve the Borough of Swissvale paid bills in the amount of $522,979.92.
I second paying our bills.
All right, Ms. Alfonso Wells beat you out in the scales. All right, that's on the table for paying the bills. Any conversation around it? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor of approving the paid bills list, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion passes. All right, now we are moving to item C, personnel. This is where we are appointing the different boards and commissions figures that we have interviewed over the last 2 weeks. So I would first welcome a motion to appoint for the first planning commission seat.
I would like to make a motion to appoint Ms. Vera Lawson to a 4-year term on the Planning Commission expiring on December 31st, 2026.
Second.
Ms. Scales, you got it in that time. All right, so Ms. Lawson is on the table for the first planning commission appointment. Is there any conversation or discussion around this appointment? All right, hearing none, let's vote. All in favor of appointing Ms. Lawson to another 4-year term, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Welcome to the Planning Commission for another 4 years, Ms. Lawson. All right, let's appoint the second Planning Commission member.
I move to appoint George Petty to a 4-year term on the Planning Commission expiring on December 31st, 2026.
I'll second that.
Okay, any conversation around Mr. Petty's appointment? Let's vote. All in favor of appointing Mr. Petty, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that sounds like that passes. Mr. Petty, welcome back to the Planning Commission. Let's move down to the zoning. Item 3 for the zoning board.
I move to appoint Gilbert Miller to a 5-year term on the zoning hearing board expiring on December 31st, 2027.
Second.
Okay, the motion is on the table. Any conversation around Mr. Miller? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor of applying Mr. Miller, or of appointing Mr. Miller to the zoning board, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, he is appointed. Let's move on to the Water Authority Board.
I motion to appoint Ms. Tracy Crombie Collins to a 5-year term on the Wilkinsburg Penn Joint Water Authority Board of Directors expiring on December 31st, 2027. She
I'll
gives
second
bad
that.
news so nicely.
Beat me.
I'll second that.
All right. I like this this competition to get this done. Makes these motions get on that table. All right. Any conversation around Ms. Crombie Collins?
Tracy has been an exceptional conveyor of water-related information for many years, and I would like to thank her for her service.
She has, and she's gone beyond just reporting. I know there have been plenty of times we've asked questions and she has gone and gotten the answers and reported those back to us. So that has been very helpful as well. So yes, let's vote. All in favor of reappointing Miss Tracy Crombie Collins to the Water Authority Board, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. Let's move to the Civil Service Commission.
I move to appoint Pamela Schmidbar to a 6-year term on the Civil Service Commission expiring on December 31st, 2028.
Second.
Any conversation around this? Okay, let's vote. All in favor of appointing her to the Civil Service Commission, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, hearing none, motion passes. Wait, let's move on to the first of our 2 Shade Tree Commission appointments.
I move to appoint Michael Tackett to a 5-year term on the Shade Tree Advisory Committee expiring on December 31st, 2027.
Second.
Okay, motion is on the table. Would any conversation around Mr. Takakis? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor of his appointment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Let's move on to item number 7, the second motion for the second appointment for the Shade Tree Committee.
I move to appoint Kurt Summersgill to a 5-year term on the Shade Tree Advisory Committee expiring on December 31st, 2027.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just want to make a comment, and even though I'm moving for Mr. Summersgill just because he served on the Shade Tree Committee, I do want to thank Paul for his interest in the committees, and if there are any other committees, whether that's recreation or whatnot, we would certainly welcome his interest in those.
And I will say, since you brought that up, that we did pull the Recreation Board appointments off this agenda just because, as we talked about last week, I'd like to just do an inventory of rec, where they are and where we want to go with them. And then even later in the year, if we want to cycle back to reappointing or appointing on those, we can look at those. So just as a note as to why you don't see them on the agenda.
I would also like to note that I think it's amazing that we have so many residents that are so willing to put in the energy and the time into our neighborhoods to make sure that they're beautiful. And that's what they do. They put in the time and the energy and they use all of their skills for this. And even if you're not appointed to the committee, you can still work with the committee members. I don't think any of them are saying, no, you got to go away. They welcome the help. The appointment is just one aspect of it. The rest of it is just the hard work that we always do anyway, as any type of at-large committee member that's there. So I really appreciate all of the people that have come forward and want to do it and want to continue doing it. So this should not be any type of barrier to participating in our neighborhoods.
Well stated, Ms. Alfonso Wells. I'd also like to add that I know Mr. Yesko brought it up tonight, but I know in other places, one of the things that he is very passionate about is the parklet on Church and Braddock. And so, Mr. Price, I don't know if you, as kind of wearing another hat as a kind of lifelong Rotary member, if you can just reach out to Rotary and make sure that he is brought into the loop in some way there. And that could be another avenue that he has expressed interest in serving the community. And let's find a way to get that parklet done. It's sat for a long time too. So any other comments? All right, well, all in favor of appointing Mr. Kurt Summersgill to the Shade Tree Advisory Committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes.
Can I make one little note before we move on?
Yes, please go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I really like how we do this now. Time was everybody just got automatically reappointed. And so we never really got an opportunity to interview people or know what they were working on or get to know them. It was just automatic that you got to serve again. So I just wanted to say I really like the way that we've been doing this.
Yeah, and I think I appreciate those comments. And I think every year we're learning a little bit more in terms of how to, because I know there have been years that we've done this like in April. And so we're trying to be, I know Mr. Batch and I've been working together to try to be a little bit more streamlined so that you're not losing a third of your year because waiting to be appointed. So I do think that this is a good opportunity for new residents to get involved and be empowered to get involved right away. So I think that is a great way. So thanks for those comments. All right, let's move on to item D, resolutions. The first resolution is for resolution 23-02, if someone wants to make that.
I move to approve resolution 23-02, authorizing the staff to submit a grant application to the COVID-19 Small Water and Sewer Grant Program for funding to replace the sanitary sewer line on Schley Avenue.
Second.
All right, any comments about this motion, discussion?
Sewers, let's get some.
Yeah, it is, and this
Glad
is
we're replacing them.
Yes, and this, just to remind everyone who's watching that might have missed last week, this is a resolution. We're kind of remaking a resolution because the scope of the project or the cost of the project of funding was increased from the state, I believe, Mr. Batchy.
The state reviewer asked us to increase the amount of the request because they didn't feel we had requested 350,000. They thought 400,000 was more appropriate.
So they want to give us more money, and so we need to make a new resolution. So that's just why that's a duplicate. All right, all in favor of approving the motion as read, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Next, we have the next motion for resolution 23-03.
I move to approve resolution 23-03, declaring the structures located at 2115 and 2117 Noble Street as dangerous buildings and ordering their demolition under the authority of Ordinance 90-8 of the Borough of Swissvale.
Second.
All right, the motion is on the table. This is, of course, the demolition that we just had the hearing for prior to the start of the meeting. I imagine there's going to be some conversation or discussion around this. If anyone wants to jump in, feel free. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Salisbury, and then Mr. Mize.
So I think I'm the only one on council who has been through this before, because I was on council back in 2018 and somehow I used to be the new person and now I'm the person who's been around the longest. I'm not sure how that happened, but I was new. That was my very first year on council, and we went through demolition hearings back then. I'm often the person who says you can smell the mold from the street there. They are buildings that every year since then, I've asked, when are we going to be able to tear them down? So back in 2018, I actually went through those buildings. I think I'm probably the only person on council who's actually been inside of them. So 5 years ago, our chief Watson is not kidding when he says that he probably did get sick from being in there, because I did too. I went through it with my husband and with a contractor to look at those buildings back when they were for sale, before they were going to be put on the demolition list, because I was looking for a building before I bought the one that I'm sitting in now. And so I went through with a contractor to see if there was anything that could be done to fix those up. I don't know if there still is, but there used to be a big for sale sign on the side. It's probably gone now. They were trying to sell them back then. So when we started considering them for demolition, I remember that there was a woman who showed up, and she said she and her husband had purchased them as an investment property, I believe it was. And she said her husband had gotten sick or had some physical ailment that kept him from being able to work on the buildings. But it was the same story that I'm now familiar with. Ms. Scales brought up, we have people who purchase these properties. They say that they're investments, they're going to work on them, they're going to do this or that. And then somehow, one way or another, the work never gets done. So at that time, we felt sorry for this woman, because she said that they had invested quite a lot of money into this. This was their retirement. They were going to do something about it. So we gave her, I want to say it was 90 days to go and find a contractor. I think she came back to council. She had found a contractor who absolutely swore up and down to us. He promised that he was fully well-versed in mold remediation, because even back then the mold was severe. The whole basement at the time was flooded. I did not go down into the basement because I could smell from the top of the stairs to the basement that it wasn't a place I wanted to be. My husband did go down and look in that basement when I was looking at it, and it was full of water then. But this contractor swore to council that he was very, very experienced in mold remediation. He had every confidence that he was going to be able to do this. And so it was another 90 days, if I remember correctly. Nothing was ever done. And then I remember there was one of those we buy houses type of wholesalers who was trying to market it to people. I don't know if that's who convinced the woman who owns it now to purchase the property. I'm not sure if that's what happened. I know we've all had many conversations during council meetings about the predatory nature of those we buy houses type of people with the signs that they put up on the telephone pole. But I will tell you that every year since we voted in 2018 to give this person more chances, I've regretted it. I made a mistake back then, and I don't want to make it again this year, because I don't want to give this another 5 years. Because we gave it was supposed to be 3 months. And then when it changes over to a new owner, then you have to start all over again. So then we got into a problem in 2020 when it was acquired of, well, there's COVID. We had a changeover in borough manager. We didn't have the funding anymore. I think it might have been that we spent the demolition funding that we had on tearing down the GAR home that year, if I'm not mistaken, or that might have been 2019. But it just every year after year, I've brought up in council, when are we going to do something about these buildings? And if I thought that they could be rehabbed, I would have a different opinion, but I think that they can't. I truly believe that I think they were too far gone. The opinion I had of a professional contractor who's from Swissvale in 2018 was that they were too far gone then. So 5 years down the road, with more water seeping in, with mold and fungus and who knows what else growing out of control since then, I don't know that there's any hope for them to be remediated. I understand we had a resident come and speak about the fact that they would like to see these structures updated and renovated. It's my opinion that I think that, well, I'll say that they mentioned that they think that it's important to holding together the neighborhood. I actually think that it would improve the value of the neighborhood to not have these structures there, because then it would not be so much blight in the neighborhood, and that we could try to market them or have people take conservatorship of them so that they could build something new there instead of try to remediate this. I did see people, must have been after this woman purchased the property, carrying things out with no PPE on whatsoever outside. It looked like young men or teenagers were carrying things out in big like plastic Rubbermaid trash cans. And so that gave me a lot of concern because there wasn't any PPE care being taken and there was so much mold in the building. And I remember mentioning that to our code inspector at the time, that I was concerned. I don't know if those were family members or people who were hired, but that really bothered me that that was no precautions taken for people's health working in a moldy environment like that. There have been no permits pulled, and we've gone another 2 years now with someone who had the best of intentions perhaps when they acquired it, but nothing has been done. So I'm sitting here in 2023 being asked the same exact request that I fulfilled in 2018 to give somebody 90 days and 90 days. I just don't think that 90 days is going to do anything with this building. So I just wanted to say that because we've had a whole council turnover, and I'm the only person who sat in on those hearings from back then, other than, of course, Mr. Bacci and Mr. Wilhelm, and just wanted to give that background information to what was going on, because I regret my vote from 2018. I think I made a mistake back then.
Thank you, Ms. Salisbury. Go ahead, Mr. Miser.
While I appreciate Ms. Salisbury's comments, and I will not be voting in favor of this. I believe that, you know, if I regret this vote in 5 years, then I will certainly own up to that. But I believe that the presentation we were given tonight did show me that the owners of this building are able to do the work. They have already done that at the other building on Noble Street. And if you haven't, I encourage you to pull that building up on Street View. It looks very nice. It has been redone. It does have a business operating on the first floor. I'm not saying we let this drag on forever, but I think 90 days is reasonable for the documentation to be provided to show what work is going to be done. I was glad to hear that mold remediation has been done on the property, that the property has been gutted, that pest control has been done onto the property. I do think there has been a good faith effort. I'm also not, under typical circumstances, I would look at the elapsed time and say it's been 3 years. You've had time to do this. However, given the situation of the global pandemic, the resulting inflation, and one of the areas that was hit the hardest during that inflation is in contracting equipment and construction equipment, I do believe that I do believe that this owner does have a true desire to see these properties rehabilitated. And I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility, you know, to give them the 90 days to at least provide us that information. Now, I know with some of these situations, and Mr. Bacci can maybe give more info. I know he has his hand up. Even if we approve the motion, it still does give the owner some time to provide things if we wish to change our mind. But I don't know what that time frame is. But I do want to ensure that we do give this owner at least those 90 days. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Miser. Mr. Bacci.
Thank you. Just want to say the reason we had the demolition clearance hearing tonight is I announced several months ago, we received $60,000 in grant funds from Allegheny County specifically to demolish these two structures. We had put an application in last year for, I believe, $150,000 in funding through Act 152 funds, which that's the extra couple dollars you pay to record a deed that goes into a pot in the county, and then they distribute it out to municipalities to use for demolitions, specifically for demolitions. We received, they being the county, chose which ones we applied for, the ones that they wanted to fund, which were 2115 and 2117 Noble Street. And they allotted $60,000 for us to demolish them. If council does not order the demolition and gives them more time, we will probably lose the grant funds, because the Act 152 money is an annual pot of money. And they want all the money spent before the next pot is allocated. The application period will probably be in April or May of this year, and then they'll announce the grants in November like they did last year. But if we don't spend the money, they wanted the hearings within 90 days, the demolition clearance hearings within 90 days of receiving the funds. We're on about day 85 right now. So, we're cutting it close with the time frame because of the advertising requirements and such and everything, with other things we had going on. But we're within the time frame for doing that. But if we fail to pass the resolution, we'll probably lose the grant funds, and we probably can't change them because the letter was very specific, like these, this is to be used for these properties only. So, my only point is if you don't pass the resolution and we end up going down the road of having them torn down, there probably will be no grant funds available to do it. And then we'll have to order the property owner to demolish it. And, they may sit there even longer until they come up with the funds, and we may end up in court. And, we have the funds available now. Just, as the manager, I think it's important that I tell you, we will probably lose the money if we don't move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Batchey. Mr. Price.
Yes. The property directly across the street from my office is 2004 Noble Street, and it sat vacant for years, and it was a real eyesore after the real estate office had left. And I was pleasantly surprised and pleased when this family came to our community and they fixed that property up, and they did a nice job, and it has improved our end of the street. I'm also impressed that they have rehabilitated a property in Collinwood. I haven't seen that property, but I assume that they've gone through the borough to get that work done. And I'm glad to see that we're talking a local property owner that lives right here on Noble Street that's trying to fix up another Noble Street property. The last thing I worry about is this family has a language barrier problem, and it's people that have spent their entire lives in the United States have difficulty maneuvering the legal system without proper counsel. And if you add the problem that this is a family that has immigrated to the United States, that makes that a little more difficult. So I'm inclined to want to try to give them a chance. The reason I say that is as recently as earlier this month, they were paying for a structural engineer report, and they've spent money to completely gut the place. And they testified tonight that they've paid up all the taxes, and that they have repaired the roof leak. So I feel better about this family than the prior people that owned these same two structures. But I also understand exactly what Abigail was saying. We don't want to be led along. So I'm interested in hearing what the other council people say, but at the moment, I'm inclined to try to give them a chance.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Ms. Scales.
Thank you. I am not inclined to vote to demolish this property whatsoever. This particular property and this family is certainly unlike any of the other demolition hearings that have come before us. And I really actually question, out of all of the vacant, abandoned buildings in Swissvale that taxes are actually not being paid, we've cited God knows how many times. This property, whose taxes are paid, who's in constant communication with Mr. Wilhelm and Chief, made it on the list. I really
Ms.
do
Scales,
question.
hold on, Ms. Scales. I don't really like what you're insinuating right now. I think you are creating something out of. I understand your feelings on the matter, but I think you're overstepping a little bit in what you're suggesting.
I apologize if I'm insinuating anything that is not honest and pure. in terms of these proceedings. But my frustration comes from a place in being an attorney that has represented these types of cases before, that we do have laws in place that were organically and purely created for the purposes of reducing blight, because blight is an issue. It creates a place of unsafety in our neighborhoods. It devalues our neighborhoods, and it creates a host of other things. But sometimes I see the law being used in these cases that are not what the spirit and the purpose of the law was. And although this property may fall into in the check boxes, it is not similar to those that have come before us previously, meaning the actual owners of the properties are right here in Swissvale. They live here, they're taxpayers. The properties themselves are actually up to code in terms of taxes and things of that nature. And I would love to see some of these other properties that we're not getting that type of sort of responses from actually show up on this list, because those are properties that we're having issues with, and property owners that we're having issues with. So if I'm insinuating any type of, negativity in terms of our actual officials, that is not where my frustration lies. But I will not be in support of demolishing this property. The owners of these properties and the steps that they are taking is unlike those that have come before us. And I would like to see us give them that additional time. I know they're stating 90 days, but we as leaders, we also know that we just heard a list of things that has contributed towards the delay in them reaching their overall plans with this particular property. So I know they're asking for 90 days, but it sounds like they may need a few additional days in addition to that, so they can give us whatever plan that is needed, and so that they can execute that plan, so that what is necessary to bring that building up to code and reduce the issues associated with which brought it to our attention in the first place can be taken care of.
Thank you, Ms. Scales. Ms. Stribling.
Yes, I do actually understand Abigail's position. I've been here since 2015, and I walk that block a lot, and I see a lot of those abandoned buildings or, dilapidated. And I've often wondered, being a new person in Swissvale, like, who owns that property? But on the second hand, with them coming in and expressing their concern that they have the information that they need in order to move forward to kind of bring it up to code within 90 days. And I just clicked on and seen the 2014 Collingwood Avenue house that they've just renovated. I think that they have what it takes in order to get the job done without us having to be too concerned about whether or not, because now they know that this has been addressed and they have to take some action. So maybe just give them the chance. But I do understand Abigail's position, because I've looked at those buildings for a long time, like, well, when is somebody going to address that? But maybe now is the time for them to understand the importance of getting the situation taken care of and getting that gutted out, because it does look like an eyesore. And from the pictures, it looks pretty unsafe. So hopefully they'll take heed and address those issues for us to, allow them to continue to have that property there.
Thank you, Ms. Stribling. Ms. Salisbury, before we get back to you, I'd like to see, I have a few comments, and I'd like to see if Ms. Alfonso Wells has any comments so that all, and Ms. Mayor Schwartzwalder as well, just the elected officials to kind of let us all speak, and then we can kind of go through round two if we feel the need to do so. Is that okay, Ms. Salisbury?
I had a question more than.
Oh, sure. Okay, go ahead.
So Mr. Bacci mentioned earlier that we're on day 85 or so of 90. Did I understand that correctly in this grant cycle?
They asked for us to have the hearings within 90 days.
Okay, so we're right at the end of that 90-day period. What's the end of the, because I'm not trying to be cruel here, okay? I'm trying to understand if we have wiggle room whatsoever. So do we have wiggle room on this grant period, or is it like a drop dead date where if you don't use the money by a day, you're done?
I don't have it in front of me, but until we have a legal clearance, which you would have to pass a resolution for that. Until we have a legal clearance, they won't even issue us a contract. So if they don't issue us a contract, there's no money.
I guess I'm just trying to understand, like, if we needed to have the hearings within 90 days. So we're within that period now, but we don't know if there's an end date to the grant. I'm trying not to manufacture a crisis if there isn't one, is basically what I'm getting at. So I don't want us to throw away the $60,000 opportunity that's only come up once in the past 5 years for these buildings. But at the same time, I'm not trying to be unnecessarily cruel if we have wiggle room in the calendar.
Well, what I had mentioned previously was that they want all the funds used within a year. So when they announce new funding in the fall, that they will, everything else will be finished already. But is my understanding from talking to the grant manager at the county, as well as the language in the letter that was read, was basically if the hearings aren't done within 90 days and you don't have the legal clearance, you're not going to have the money. Because when we initially get the money, then we have to order a title search, and then we have to we have to notify the people, then we have to advertise. So that's what takes us, to get to this point. But it's maybe we can move the money to another project. We applied for several different houses or different buildings, and we applied for $150,000. The county chose which ones they wanted to demolish. They wanted to see us use the $60,000 on. They may allow us to do it. They may not, because then we would have to start the process over with title searches, legal clearance, etc., which puts us several months down the road.
Mr. Bacci, I want to try to ask that question, restate the question a different way. Because I'm hearing some desire on council to provide an opportunity for them to, which I have some comments that I'll make, but just while we're focusing on this, if we provide 90 days, and let's just say they don't come through, would the funds still be there at that point in time, or will we have missed our window, in your estimation?
I don't believe they'll be there because they wanted legal clearance within 90 days, and that
so,
would be
okay. Because you said the hearing in 90 days, but they also want the legal clearance, which is what this motion is on the table.
Yeah, the hearing and the legal clearance are the same, pretty much the same. Hold the hearing and then have the get the legal clearance, which is your making this motion to declare them a nuisance structure, unsafe structure, and then Mr. McTiernan would provide us a letter stating that we met the requirements of the legal clearance to demolish.
Okay.
But if we give them 180 days. Then we have to give them 90 days. Now we're 180 days. Now we have to re-advertise another hearing, hold another hearing. So we're 210 days. We're almost 7 months, 8 months into the year. So my best educated guess from dealing with them is the money will not be there.
How long is this hearing good for?
That'd be a question for Mr. McTiernan.
Mr. McTiernan, your hand is raised. How long is this hearing good for?
The hearing is good indefinitely. The only thing you have to make sure of is the condition of the property hasn't changed. I mean, one thing I thought about, if council wants to, and I'll defer to Mr. Bacci and Mr. Wilhelm, but couldn't council approve the demolition with the understanding that it would provide maybe a shorter period for the submittal of state approved plans, and then a period after that, a submission of an actual contract of construction. And I would ask the manager, couldn't you at that point, you still need time to do the contracts, to do the bidding. And before you accept the bids, you're really not committed to spending the money. Wouldn't that be fair? And then you could always turn back if the deadlines are met.
We could do that, but you would have to the council would have to pass the resolution to require the demolition.
Could the motion be amended to include a pass of this, but somehow put language that in the process, because it would take probably at least 90 days for contracts, bidding, and all that stuff to take place, that there are certain criteria that this will go through if those things are not met? Could that be put into the motion?
I mean, I think you could do that, and you don't necessarily have to, track exactly what the property owner. I mean, you could set a shorter period of time contingent on it's approved, contingent on the potential for reconsideration if the following, standards are met, within so many days. It doesn't have to be 90 days to submit state approved plans or stamped plans, and so many days after that to provide a contract, to have the repair work done. Things like that. I mean, actually to set some goals and guidelines, and with the understanding that before you bid it, before you bid the demolition, that you would have the people would have an opportunity to make major strides towards that. I mean, that would be one possibility. I mean, I'm not advocating, and I'm not an elected official, but I think you could, if you could approve it, subject to review by council within so many days or prior to letting the bids, with the understanding that the property owner would have to do X, Y, and Z. And Mr. Batchy and especially Mr. Wilhelm could suggest exactly what those steps are. I don't think you necessarily have to have a lengthy period of time and say it all has to be done by a certain time. You could set some goalposts right at the beginning about what you're expecting to be accomplished within 30 days, within 60 days, within 90 days. And then if it's not, just go ahead with the, confirming the adoption of the demolition that you've given this evening. I mean, does that make sense to anybody? I think that
it does. Thank you, Mr. McTiernan. Ms. Salisbury, are you okay do you have another question, or can I make my comments before we go to round two?
No, go ahead, sir.
Okay, so I just want to make some of my comments. I appreciate the comments of my fellow council members here tonight, but I am prepared to go in and vote yes on this demolition. It's nothing personal. I am very sympathetic towards what they say, but the fact that this has been vacant and was in deplorable condition 5 years ago, gutting it, doing some treatments. Again, even if they've sprayed for mold, it sounds like everything is going to need to be fixed together, strengthened, joists, things like that. I mean, this is a long haul process, and I think the fact that we have $60,000 here at our disposal that I don't want to lose, because that's not something that we can afford for the borough. I think that there was an affidavit signed that that basically was, when we get money, we are going to demolish this, and that was understood and signed and notarized. And I think that we're at that point, and they have not. I mean, again, I get it that it's the pandemic. I get it that there are, you run into difficulties with contractors. I feel for them, but I think that this house is a threat to the health and safety of our community. These structures, rather. And I just think they need to be torn down. I understand people's desire to give them a window, but if we give them a 90-day window and they don't do anything with it, we now have lost that funding more than likely, and the structure continues to stand and nothing has changed. And so if nothing else, I would encourage a member of council who is against the demolition to perhaps make an amendment to that, to maybe put the ball in their court, that we vote in favor of the demolition with some of these addendums that Mr. McTiernan was just citing, that gives them, within 60 days, you have stamped drawings and have shown the financial security to be able to do that. And that puts the onus on them to say, all right, I got to get in gear to make sure these things happen so it doesn't get demolished. Again, puts the responsibility on them to actually do this, as opposed to us saying, all right, we're not going to demo it, you go ahead and provide it, and then if they don't, we're up the creek. So that would be perhaps my recommendation in this process. So I think those are enough of my comments. Ms. Alfonso Wells, do you have anything you want to add before we loop back to Ms. Salisbury and Mr. Price?
I'll wait till Ms. Salisbury and Mr. Price make their comments.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Salisbury, go ahead.
So I wish we didn't have this tight window of the money situation, because like I said, I'm not trying to be cruel to someone. I looked up the owner history on the property. It looks like something around $22,000 was paid for it. So it's not as if they got it for $1 or something. They did invest money in this property with hopes of doing something with it. I assume that would be a financial return. So that would be a loss. Now, we aren't seizing the property from them. We are demolishing it. But we've waited 5 years to be able to get the money to do this. You know, these demolitions are expensive. And so, you know, we had to get a grant from the state to tear down the GAR home, and we don't get to do too many of these demos. I definitely appreciate what Ms. Scales said, that there are lots of things around town that could stand to be torn down, but we made a demolition list, and these are the ones that we were awarded the money for, according to my understanding of what Mr. Batchy said, that they chose for us off the list of these are the ones that they identified that we should tear down. So these have been on a demolition list already for years. And as Mr. Ansel said, we did say that if we got the money, we would tear them down. That's in writing what we provided. So, you know, I don't want to make liars of us that we submitted that, but I am also not entirely heartless. I certainly felt, you know, I feel for people who sit there and say, we have invested money in this, and I've been going to school and COVID happened and et cetera, life happens. I understand that. So what I would be in favor of is one of two things. I would either vote for demolition, you know, moving forward, or I would vote for something more creatively worded along the lines of what we were workshopping a minute ago, where we approve the demolition subject to, if they meet the following requirements, we can always stop the wrecking ball right up until the last day. But then we haven't lost our chance to get that $60,000, because that's what we did in 2018. That's what we screwed up, is we gave them more time, but we didn't really put strings on the time. We just let it go. And so then we lost the funding. We weren't able to move forward with the demolition. So I don't want to make that same mistake that I've already made once on council again. So if we can workshop something like that and come to a middle ground, I'm very interested in doing that.
Mr. Price.
If the property is demolished, what we will end up with in the end are vacant lots. And those vacant lots will have a demolition lien against them. I'm a little cynical about the chances that someone is going to build something new there. I would say that most likely the lots will sit vacant for years, and then someone will eventually acquire them under the vacant lot program and turn them into parking lots that will produce very little tax income. If somehow this family is able to bring these properties back, these mixed-use properties, then they will provide a cash stream to the borough for taxes that are being paid on them. So we actually stand to benefit if these people are able to bring these properties back. I don't know if they can or not, but I do know that when the distillery purchased the vacant bar on Noble Street at sheriff's sale, when they got in, there was tremendous water damage, and they were able to bring that back. So my hope is always to try to save things and bring them back if possible. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Before we go to Ms. Scales, Ms. Alfonso Wells, I'm going to give you an opportunity if you want to jump in yet.
Yeah, I would just say that it's very interesting. I think everybody is coming at it from a good place. I've heard everybody come at it from many different angles, from a good place, I would say. This looks like these are different owners than the ones we may have dealt with before. I was on council at the tail end of 2018, I believe. So, and this seems like a very familiar house that probably came up. And I think they were like, yeah, we're going to fix it and blah, 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 and never got fixed. But I think we do have different people. And I'm very hesitant to like paint them with the same brush when they're different people. I mean, it looks like they paid for the property. And, you know, small business owners really get screwed. I mean, $22,000 is a lot of money for somebody. I know it's a lot of money for me, right? So, you know, to me, I would like to see if they're, you know, I know the state picked it out and said, here, these are the ones I want you to demolish. But do we have an opportunity to say, yeah, well, someone's going to work on that one. Can we get something else demolished? But aside from that, aside from whether or not they demolish it, right? That money isn't money that we, you know, it's money that's being given to us to do something with. And somebody says that this is my property, I want to fix it. we're not really losing. Yes, we're losing money to demolish something, but if that doesn't get demolished and it gets fixed, then we aren't at a loss, relatively speaking. I would like to give them a chance. I don't know how bad that damage is. I don't know, and I'm really sensitive, so to any type of smell anywhere. I could probably smell it from here. So I definitely would like to get rid of the smell, and if they could mitigate it, that'd be great. It looks like they did have some issues in terms of being able to turn this around. It was not in the hands. I mean, even the people who are dealing with it now, it's the younger daughter, not the older daughter who had first started out. I feel very sympathetic for them as they try, right? And they've paid the taxes on it. That's what gets me. All those other properties, no one had paid anything on it at all. And we have taxpayers that are living in the neighborhood. That to me sways my vote. To say I don't think, time always goes on. If they can fix it and they can show a plan to get that fixed, I am, more than willing to let them have a shot at it, as opposed to, because they've sunk their money into it. And once again, whether it's $22,000 or $100,000, someone sunk money into it, and they clearly want to show us that they have the investment money at the moment to get something done with it. I'd like to see if they can, because they already live in the neighborhood. So we know they're not going anywhere. It's not like they're going to make that much profit off of this that they're going to leave and go out of state. So I would like to give them a chance. That's how I feel.
Thank you, Ms. Alfonso Wells. Ms. Scales.
Yes, I just wanted to also mention that I'm not in favor of not demolishing it with some type of conditions associated with it, and but for the conditions happening, then demolishing is going to happen. Bill kind of hinted on it in terms of when you make certain decisions, the trickle effect that it has on it, that you're not thinking about in the moment. So he hinted on it by saying if we actually demolish it, it gets demolished. Now there's a lien, and now that creates an issue for somebody else to actually come in and build upon it, because they got to take care of that lien first. So if we place conditions, whatever funding they may be using to be able to do whatever is needed, these conditions can actually have an impact on the investor being willing to loan them the money because of these conditions associated with it, saying that we're going to turn around and demolish what they're investing in. So I'm not in favor of that as well because of those reasons.
Thank you, Ms. Scales. Chief Wilhelm, you had your hand up earlier. Did you want to say anything?
Yes, I have an idea that may satisfy everyone. And I'm thinking in parallel with like our fire escrow ordinance. Is there a way, and this is a question to the solicitor, if they said they have the funding available to do these repairs, it's far going to exceed the cost than to demolish the buildings. Is there a way that you can't enter into an agreement with them and have them put money in escrow? And if they start to do the work, the borough can release the money for them to pay their contractors. But if they don't, the taxpayers aren't going to get stuck with the bill of tearing down the buildings. So it doesn't cost them anything. Their money's their money. But if they're really going to fix it up, would they care to put it into a escrow fund established by the solicitor that if you don't fix the stuff in the time period, then we're going to use your money to tear it down? It's just a thought. There's been other, things that we've done like this in the past where we've been able to be creative. And that's why we have escrow ordinances for die test, for the fire escrow, and other things like that. This could just be another way to accomplish the same goal, but make everybody feel okay about it. Because I agree. I mean, I'm sad that they spent money on the property, and it's the only reason these came up is they were on the list that have been recurring since 2016 of our identified properties that get torn down. And there's nobody, I don't think anybody in the community would rather not see them be fixed up. But the reality is you have the chance of losing that 60,000 that then puts the burden back on the taxpayer. Just my thought.
Yeah, Mr. Chief Wilhelm, thank you for that. I just want to restate, if I can restate this, and if you can tell me if I'm accurate in this, just to try to bring clarity for all of us, that basically this would be us giving a pass on the county funding that we have talked about because we would miss the time because we're giving them a chance. But in lieu of that, we would ask them to put roughly $60,000 into an escrow account that would cover the demolitions if they do not work on the property by some set time period that council has agreed upon. And that way, if they do make the repairs, they would get that money back as part of the repairs. If they do not make the repairs or do not qualify for what they have said they were going to do, that money then becomes property of the borough and is utilized to demolish the buildings so that it's not funded by our budget, and therefore the tax payers of our community are not paying that. Is that an accurate restatement of what you said?
Yes, that's a good summary of that. And you can extend the timeline too compared to the 90 days, because it's probably going to take 90 days to get architectural drawings done. That's
Yes.
the reality of it.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that suggestion. Let's go to Mr. Miser, and then after he makes his comments, we can circle back on some of those thoughts as well.
Yeah, thanks. I will say I would be in favor of something like what Mr. Wilhelm just said. If we have the legal grounds to do so, and the property owners would be amenable to that. I just restating what others have said. I just think this is a situation that is unlike the other demolition hearings we've heard. It's an unfortunate set of circumstances that we have this 60,000 on the table. It's unfortunate that this property has been a recurring issue for the owners previous to this. But I feel like with this situation, the current owners are kind of being, placed in a really difficult situation because of the history of the property. Now, with that being said, as we saw during the hearing, they were provided documentation of what was going on with the property when they obtained it. But still, and maybe it's just me having a bleeding heart, but I truly believe that they have every intention, and if what they're saying is true, they have the funds to turn this building around. And I would much rather see those buildings turned around than two empty grass lots on Noble Street for who knows how long. So
thank you, Mr. Miser. Ms. Salisbury.
I think Mr. Wilhelm is a really good idea. It's not something I would have thought of. It's very creative. It's not a solution I would have come up with, but to me, it's better than doing what I did before, which is just trust the person. Because I'll tell you, as a small business owner, I've trusted people on council a bunch of times, and I shouldn't have, because I have a very soft heart for a small business owner. And I say, oh, well, you seem like you're good for it and you can do it. And then it didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to turn out. So to me, I think that's a very creative solution, if that's something that we can make work.
Mr. McTiernan, your hand is raised. Is this something that is within our legal right or ability?
Well, my question was, are we talking about approving the demolition, which would give me the ability to issue a clearance letter? And then I was going to ask Mr. Batchy, how much time before the contract for the funds are signed, the bids are let, and then a final demolition is issued? I mean, if you pass on the funds now, perhaps you go to the owner and they would say, I can't do $60,000. I was trying to structure something where you could approve the demolition with the understanding that you would try to negotiate a rescission of that decision before you get the money or before you spend the money.
I appreciate that, Mr. McTiernan, although from what even though as I've said, I'm in favor of that, what I've heard from other council members is I don't think that people are in favor of that, of having that on the demolition right there. I would perhaps wonder, could we even table this discussion for a month? So we're not anywhere near 90 days, but a month to deliberate. And in that time, negotiate with the owner to see if they would be amenable to that. If they are amenable, that becomes our next course of action. If they are not amenable, then we discuss this approval of the demolition at the March meeting.
Well, I think to push it back a month, we're beyond the 90 days. The 90 days ends this week. So if we push it back a month for discussion and with them.
Yeah.
I think from, to answer Mr. McTiernan's question, there's two distinct paths here. You either approve the demolition, require them to demolish it, or you work with them to get it rehabbed and then revisit it later. It doesn't seem to me like the paths can be concurrent with demolition, using the county funds, and then because we don't have 60 or 30 or 60 or 90 days to wait with the county. They wanted these done in a timely manner because they want all the demolitions done before they award the next round. And if we give them 90 days, and like Mr. Wilhelm said, it'll take them 90 days just at least to get architectural drawings. There's no way they're going to meet the time frame where we could then go and advertise it, demolish it, pay this off, and get everybody paid before the year's up.
I thought Mr. Wilhelm was not necessarily saying they have 90 days, but I made my point, and I'll just defer again. I'm not a decision maker. I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, and Mr. Batchy, I appreciate the comments. I mean, I think that they want these things done by 90 days. Reading the room, it's not happening. Like, I mean, I think Ms. Salisbury and I are the only two that have spoken in favor of being willing to vote yes as the motion is read. We've had Ms. Scales who has said that she is voting no, not only as the motion is read, but even she's not amenable to an amendment as we had discussed earlier. And so I think that if, the 90 days is just off the table, we will not hit that deadline tonight. Because unless two other individuals change their vote, which I don't anticipate that happening or where they're leaning towards for their vote. I think that if we do something like a table, yes, we'd be outside of the 90 days, but it's not like we're waiting 180 days. I mean, it would be if we're on day 85, what would it be? Day like, because 28 days from today is when we would be making the decision. So, 113 or something. And so, 2 weeks past that 90-day time period. So I'm just trying to create an avenue where we maybe we will have missed our shot by that point in time, but we will not have overshot it so significantly that maybe the county would not be willing to extend that deadline by an extra 2 weeks or 3 weeks in there. So those are just, I think, some of my responses to that I think that the 90 days isn't going to happen tonight. Ms. Salisbury.
I see our mayor has her hand up, and I've spoken a bunch of times, so maybe let her go first.
Go ahead, Deneen, go ahead.
So if everything is approved tonight and we go along with the demolition hearing and approve it, but also parallel with the 60,000 in escrow, maybe they don't have that money and they won't be able to. Why can't we do both? And if they do come up with this escrow money and in good faith, they follow through and start the remodel, can't we just give this money back? I mean, if the county gives us this money and we say, oh, we're not going to use it, won't they gladly take it back? Like, if it's approved and nothing happens with this building, then we are screwed again. But if we approve it and they do follow through and remodel, can't we go to the county and say, well, we have another solution and here's your $60,000 back?
Although, I mean, Mr. Batch can speak to this, but I don't know that the county does the county pay us to do this, Mr. Batchy?
No, we have to front the money and we get reimbursed. So if it's a case where we're not going to use it, I mean, we can just tell the county that we're not going to demolish it, those structures, and there will never be a contract generated, and they'll reprogram. They could either reprogram the $60,000 to us for other ones that we had requested, or they could reprogram it to another municipality. So there's no guarantee that we'll get to use the money because we're outside of the window of, outside the window for using it, because we'd have to have to grab another one, then have another demolition clearance hearing on another property. So, but yeah, I mean, you're under no obligation to accept the funds. They were awarded, but you don't have to accept them.
So why wouldn't we at least accept this clearance hearing and go forward with Plan B? And if Plan B doesn't work, then we still have our clearance. and just run it parallel.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, Mayor Schwartzwelder, I think that's what I was advocating for, but I heard from at least one member of council that they would not be in favor of that.
Well, we've done this for 6 years. We're going on 7 years. And if what Chief Wilhelm says that these buildings are in bad condition, why are we going to trust that they will have the funds to be able to rehab them? And I strongly advise that we run a parallel venture here and try with both. But if we do not approve tonight, then we're losing that opportunity, and our business district can't afford that.
Thank you, Mayor Schwartzwelder. Ms. Salisbury, we'll go back to you.
I don't know if there's an opportunity to grab them again. I mean, this is one of the issues with not having meetings in person. Once upon a time, they would have just sat through the rest of the meeting to figure out how we voted, right? And we could have just asked them, hey, do you have the money? I don't know if there's a way to contact them. I remember that the daughter said something along the lines of, I wish I could show you the funding. She said something about having a funding letter that she could show us, but she didn't show it to us. I don't know if that means she doesn't have it. And it was expected, but she doesn't have it in hand. But I mean, I just don't want to throw away the opportunity to have the money. That said, I haven't seen the grant documentation, so I don't know what the exact wording of that would be either. It sounds like we don't have that to hand either, which I think is probably something we should have had. But you know, I'm agreeing with the mayor, and don't be too shocked, but I'm agreeing with Clyde too, that I think that we should have, some means of enforcement. Like I'm okay with giving them more time to fix it if we have some kind of enforcement mechanism to make sure that it gets fixed. What I'm not okay with is throwing away a $60,000 grant opportunity that we've been waiting for 5 or 6 years to get, and then never having any means to enforce them to actually do the work, because then we're just doing exactly what happened in 2018, and that clearly didn't work out. And yes, I understand these are different people, but I've already gotten burned once on this essentially. So if we have some kind of enforcement mechanism, that seems like the perfect solution.
Ms. Alfonso Wells.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about taking their money and putting it in an escrow account. I mean, they might have things that they're trying to do with it. They're definitely, very small business people, because they're doing a bunch of different things. And I'm just concerned, right? They're trying to do it, but it's like we're punishing them, and they're the new folks. I agree. And I see that everybody seems to have this feeling that they're new, and we don't want to necessarily punish them because they're taking the property that has so many issues behind it. I just feel very uncomfortable with, and I know there has to be some other mechanism, but I feel very uncomfortable with, it's like, okay, we hear that you have problems. We know there was a pandemic and a lot of things couldn't get done, but because the property at some point, the people told us they were going to do it and they didn't, and they sold it to you, right? Now we're going to punish you for that. I want the property to get taken care of too. The demolition money, relatively speaking, I mean, these are people who are paying the taxes on the property. I'd like to see something get done with the property and it not just become, once again, a parking lot or a big vacant block of land that no one can do anything with and we can't beautify, and it takes forever to get something done on it. So anyway, that's how I feel.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Alfonso Wells. Mr. Price.
Yes. Do we have a way to contact them right now? Do we have a contact phone number? Because maybe if we could move on to other business and circle back to this, maybe we might be able to ask them a few more questions.
Mr. Batchy, I saw you on mute. Do you want to
I do not have it here with me. I have it at the office. I have a phone number for the daughter, but I do not have it with me.
If I go over there, can I get it?
You can't get in my office.
Hmm.
I mean, I could run across the street and knock on the door and see
I'm
if,
good. Yeah.
if I can get anyone, if I could be excused for a minute, but you know.
How would other council members feel about that? Would they like to table this temporarily in this meeting? Yeah, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down to see. Okay, I see 2 thumbs up.
I'm in favor of Bill knocking on the door.
Yeah. Miss
Same.
Stribling, you okay with that? Miss Scales? Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't we do that? All right. Let's. What would be the Robert's rules of mechanism for this? To someone to table this for later in the meeting? How do we do that, Mr. McTiernan?
Just a motion to postpone consideration until the end of business. That's all. You don't need to table it. Just a motion to postpone further action on this particular item until the completion of the meeting or the other items in the meeting. So that's
Also, in the meantime, I just have to run to the bathroom really quick. I've been drinking water all day. I'm so sorry. Just give me 5 minutes. You can keep going, but I need 5 minutes.
All right. Okay. So can someone?
I'll
make
do
that-
it. Yeah. I move to postpone consideration of this motion until some point later in the meeting when we revive it.
Second.
Second. All right. Can we vote on this then? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. So we have 5 ayes. Any nays? And 2 abstentions because they had evacuated premises temporarily. Okay. I know, I appreciate your patience in all of this. I think this shows that we all are taking this very seriously and we are all very sympathetic. There are just some of us that are optimists and some of us that are pessimists about this, this process. Again, I don't know, I guess I say that tongue in cheek. Sometimes I'm a pessimist, you're proven right or pleasantly surprised. So we'll circle back to that if Bill is able to get them. Let's move on to our reports then. Our first report is for the COG. Ms. Scales, do you have any reports
Chris,
that you? Yes.
I'm sorry. Just in the meantime, while it's tabled, Greg, is it possible to get like the actual verbiage on that grant that it could be emailed to council so we could see some of that wording for the timing we have?
I don't have it with me.
Okay.
Okay. It's a physical letter that's in my office.
All right, Josh, you good if I keep going? Okay, Ms. Scales, do you have or Ms. Stribling a report for the Turtle Creek Valley COG?
Yeah, I have the report.
Great.
All right,
You got
great.
the floor.
Okay, good. So last Thursday, January 26th, we met via Zoom. What was the topics that were discussed? We were discussing the code and forth. Glassport and North Braddock have submitted their signed agreement to the beta phase participants. We continue to work with Grassroots Solutions on that business plan. Code enforcement. We're working with the Local Government Academy, LGA, to develop a workforce development plan for code enforcement. The preliminary idea is to create an apprenticeship program through the Turtle Creek Valley called Code Enforcement Program by engaging tech schools in our region. We had an initial meeting with LGA and Strategic Solutions on January 18th. The VACTOR program. Spring will be here before we know it. So please submit your opt-in agreements for 2023. We would appreciate your help in getting dates on our calendar in April, May, and June. With your permission, I will open a certificate of deposit so that our VACTOR replacement fund can grow more rapidly. The highest rate I've seen to date is 4.1%. The annual dinner will be held Friday, February 10th. The Turtle Creek Valley COG annual dinner will take place on February 10th at the Edgewood Country Club. They decided to maximize networking time by keeping the program short and with one guest speaker, the Honorable Jim Brewster, State Senator. We can, let individuals know if they have any specific topics. You can outreach to Amanda to submit that information. But she also thought that they were going to do something different as far as the tabling this year. And they just have a few round tables near the podium for the speakers instead of having the long one like they had last year. What will be served at the annual dinner is wedding soup, chicken parm, pasta rosa cream, sausage stuffed banana peppers, green beans, rolls, and butter. And of course, your choice of dessert, tiramisu, lemon cake, and coffee decaf and iced tea. And there's a cash bar. Again, one drink ticket will be provided upon entrance at the event. There will be a meeting with John Weinstein. Mr. Weinstein requested a meeting to discuss ways Allegheny County could better engage and support the Turtle Creek Raleigh Cogs. She met with them for over 2 hours, after which he expressed his interest in meeting with all 7 COG directors in Allegheny County. That meeting took place on January 24th. Mr. Weinstein seems very interested in finding ways to partner with COGS, and should he be elected as our next county executive. Mr. Lamb will be also talking with the COG directors at our next regular COG directors meeting in March. Please save the date. The County Executive Candidate Forum has been slated for March 29th at 5:30 p.m. at the Palisades in McKeesport. This is a great opportunity to showcase our needs and priorities to the next county executive. And it's also critical we have attendance from elected officials and staff of our member towns. We will be working on putting questions together in the next few weeks. Enterprise Zone of Braddock East Shore Initiative has been asked to serve on the, Amanda has been asked to serve on the Executive Director Search Committee, For more information on this exciting opportunity, you can go to the website at eastshorepittsburgh.com/work. Police testing. We conducted a police test for Churchill, East McKeesport, Forest Hills, and Pitcairn on January 17th. Unfortunately, we only had 2 out of the 3 candidates show up for the test. Twistwell Police Regionalization Meeting. She mentioned how she attended our meeting to speak about the current shared services through Turtle Creek Raleigh COG at the public meeting on January 23rd. It was a good introduction of existing and developing shared services in our area. Everyone seemed interested in moving the conversations forward, and it was suggested that the next meeting be a police regionalization 101 for those who are new on the concept. She also stated that at the meeting, it would be helpful to hear some case studies on other police regionalization efforts. The A-Long Spring Conference is slated for April 13th through the 16th. And they're all in favor of Turtle Creek Law continuing the tradition of hosting a hospitality suite, which it'll still be for 3 days. Any information, you can pass that over to Amanda as well. And that's all that I have. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Stribling.
You're welcome.
That is the COG report. Ms. Alfonso Wells, have you returned? All right, you're muted, but you're back. It's you're up with the Connect report.
Yeah, so Connect, we've been doing a lot of meetings with, I think actually when we had our last meeting last week, Wednesday, we had the meeting about fire safety, and Chief Wilhelm had attended that one. So we were talking about fire safety and actually making sure that we have a viable fire force going forward. And that's what we had discussed. That was our meeting. We also had a lead meeting today where we were discussing our cohort is ready to go. And we were just putting on the final touches so that we can get started. We have our social workers, and Chief Watson attended that one. So Swissville has been around, one could say, doing lots of different things to improve our neighborhoods and to improve our region. So we're going to continue in that vein, and hopefully in another couple of months, we'll have a report in terms of how well LEAD is doing. I mean, there's not much I can tell you at this point because everybody is still getting together. The judges are meeting because that's a level of intervention that we could do from the bench. And everybody seems to be very well satisfied with how they're connecting with one another in terms of this LEAD project. That's what I've been focusing on the most. And some of our citizens actually did attend a meeting where they were talking about sustainable and renewable sources of energy. So we're continuing on with that. And once again, as I say, every time I give this report, everyone is welcome to come to any of these meetings. You are not barred. So anybody who has the hankering to just go and make some connections with some folks, some of them random and some of them actually pretty well placed in Allegheny County government, you are more than welcome to come along and join me, or don't even join me, just go on your own. So I invite you once again, and every once in a while, I'll see a familiar face pop up. I just never know who it's going to be, but I know every once in a while, a couple of you just pop up into these meetings. So that's fantastic, and hopefully I'll see somebody else the next time we have one of these meetings. That is my report.
Great, thank you, Ms. Alfonso Wells. Mr. Price, thank you for your venture. Ms. Didamona, thank you for rejoining us. I don't know if you've been watching the meeting. There's been a lot of conversation around the motion that was on the table for the demolition hearing. There were a couple of members of council who had, I think, it was expressed that in a normal live in-person meeting, a lot of times you would stick around and we could call on you and say, hey, we have some questions for further reflection. So Bill graciously ran across the street to grab you. So if
I'm sorry, the letter stated that after you're done, you can just get out. So I wasn't. I thought I was
no, you did absolutely the right thing. This is just, if we were in person, it would have been a little bit different. And so we're trying to mimic that. So yeah, you did absolutely nothing wrong. I think this is somewhat unusual for us to call someone back on like this. So I know that there was some desire to have some questions for Ms. Dudamona. If anyone from council would like to ask questions or make inquiries, she's graciously rejoined us, and now would be a great time. Mr. Miser.
Thank you for rejoining us. I think one of the questions that we're just first of all to clarify, so you were not on to hear the discussion or deliberation that we had?
No,
after the hearing. Okay.
No,
one of the discussions that had been going on is you had, I believe you stated during your testimony that the funding is already secured and you have proof of that funding.
Yes.
In what way do you have that documented?
So the documents that I have, which it's going to be in French, just because the bank that my mother has, it's a bank, it's the National Bank of Africa. It's back home, which is where the fundings are. But we've bought houses where they can just transfer the money. It's not a big issue as far as like transferring money.
And what is the funding you have secured?
Right now, the last that I checked, I can show the statement. The statement that I have right now, I believe it's from the month of November, but it hasn't changed. It was close to 300K. But I can screenshot it. But I don't have the updated one, but I can bring it in, or I can get it by probably end of tomorrow. Oh, let me not say that, only because it can take steps because she's not there in person, maybe by the end of the week, Friday.
Are there additional questions?
And by the way, sorry, that 300K was US dollars, just in case, because we are in different countries. I just want to clarify that.
And also just to clarify, because I know you do own, or your mother owns other properties.
Mm-hmm.
Is that 300,000 solely for these two properties on Noble Street?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Ms. Salisbury, I think you were about to speak before
go ahead, Mr. Price. Go
okay.
ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Price.
You're muted.
One of the things that council's worried about is that we had applied for funds from the county for demolition.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't use those funds within a very short period of time, then we lose the funds. On the other hand, we realize that while we've been struggling with this property for many years before you became involved in it, that those past years were before you became owners, and we would like to try to work something out that would be beneficial for you and the community both. So what we were discussing is and maybe I should turn this over to Mr. McTiernan, but we were discussing the possibility that money could be deposited in a escrow account to assure that you would be able to go forward, and that if then that didn't happen, we would have the money for demolition. Because if we don't approve this demolition, we stand the risk of losing this grant from the county, and that's what we're worried about. And we don't want to be in a situation where we extend extensions to you and then lose the county money, and then we're completely out. But maybe someone else can be more articulate and express that better.
Sorry, I had a question. Can you clarify as far as an escrow account? I'm not so familiar with this.
Well, that means a special bank account that is commonly held by a law firm, like Mr. McTiernan is a lawyer with a very reputable firm, and they would hold that money like a deposit with a written agreement as to your time plan for completing the building. Because if you could save this building, we would always prefer that to a vacant lot. But that we would have, but if it never got done, the money would be there to demolish the building. But let me turn it over to Bob, because I think he'd be able to articulate that better.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I don't know if my firm could be an escrow holder since we represent the borough. Often with a developer, you pay the money into the escrows held by the municipality with the understanding that if certain goals aren't met by certain dates, the money could be used, I guess in this case, towards the demolition. Do I have that correct with council? Is that what you're anticipating? If the benchmarks aren't met and the work isn't completed, the money would be available to the borough to proceed with the demolition?
I mean, I think that's what Bill was asking. So, Mr. Dudamona, just to try to clarify an escrow account is kind of like a neutral account in the way that you would be, it's like putting a down payment on a house, that if you make good on your agreement and renovate and hit certain benchmarks, that money would be refunded to you. If you do not follow through on the rehabbing of the building, the money would then fall to the ownership of the borough to be used for the demolition process. So it would provide you the protection of allowing us to pass on this demolition hearing in a way that kind of gives you that a longer time frame than we would be allowed to open to offer you with this grant. But it also protects the borough that if you are not faithful in doing what you said you were going to do, we have the resources then to follow through with what we feel like we need to do. So that I don't know if that clarifies it a little bit of what an escrow account would be.
I just want to make a quick clarification to make sure we don't go, I do think that this is an option that can be on the table, but I don't know what grounds Jocelyn has to be in any way agreeable to this tonight, especially without her being able to review any sort of, legal side of this. I just want to be careful that we don't get her to be like, oh, okay, that sounds good. And then we enter into some sort of weird agreement here over the meeting. So I just want us to tread carefully there.
Sure. I was just trying to clarify what the escrow account would be. Ms. Scales.
Yeah, I would like for us to afford Joycelyn the opportunity to consult with legal counsel, because Mr. McTiernan is amazing, but he is attorney for the borough of Swissvale. He is not counsel for Ms. Joycelyn. So as a property owner, there are legal rights that she has as it relates to this property. And I thought we brought her back to the table so we can get a little bit more clarity in regards to funding. But we're talking about her going into a legal agreement, which means there's some type of right that she's exercising or giving up. And I'd like for us to give her the opportunity to consult with the attorney on what the best option is for her when it comes to exercising her legal rights.
Ms. Salisbury.
I agree with that. I think that as we're going through this, we can't really, push her into it this evening. The problem then just becomes timeliness. So what can we, I think then perhaps the other option is to look at, I think it's what our mayor suggested of approving the demolition subject to achievement of certain benchmarks, because I don't think that we can get her to agree I don't think it would be appropriate to push her into an escrow at this time, since, Mrs. Scales is correct that she should have an opportunity to talk to somebody about that, and we can't make that happen this evening. We've just painted ourselves into a corner timeline wise.
Mr. Wilhelm.
Yes. One thing that I just want to throw in, and just from my experience and being on both sides of this administration, is that the resolution keeps the grant alive, but council still has to approve 2 more steps before the demolition occurs. You have to approve to put it out the bid, and you have to approve to accept the bid. So there's still more layers ahead that if council did pass the resolution, it keeps the grant alive, and maybe Mr. Batchy can move to other properties and get them to do it. But you still have 2 other steps that council would have to approve before any demolition could take place. So merely approving the resolution doesn't necessarily approve the demolition. And I think that was lost kind of along the way. And I just wanted to clarify that. Bob can elaborate a little bit more, but you're basically approving the resolution for the grant and giving a legal clearance, but you're not taking action to demolish the property.
Yeah, I would agree. Just by passing this, you're not legally obligated to take the money. You're not legally obligated to spend it.
Thank you, Mr. McTiernan. While we still have Ms. Dudamono on the call, is she still on, or did? Oh, yes, she is. There you are. Sorry, I couldn't find you on the screen. Are there any particular questions for her while she is still here? We can get back to our deliberation after that, but I want to respect her time. So Chief Wilhelm, do you have a question specifically for her? I see your hand still up. All right, we'll go to Ms. Salisbury. Ms. Salisbury.
Thank you for coming back to talk to us. I appreciate it. Do you have a sense of a timeline of how long you might need, or your mother might need, to be able to complete this project, or at least make substantial progress on the project?
Well, I know by talking to my contractor, I asked for 90 days to focus on the 4 main things that the chief police officer, the fire department was saying the reason why it was brought into demolition. So I asked for 90 days to tackle on those main points. But as far as we have 2 buildings that we're working on, and also really depends on how fast the contractor works, and if we don't hit any mishaps or anything, it could be done within this year. 2 of the buildings, really. 9 months probably. But as far as those main points, we did ask for 90 days once the building permit is given for us to get out of this hole.
Would you be willing to prioritize like this building?
For sure.
Okay.
For sure. Well, this is what I tried to explain earlier, that I did go to when I went to the borough, it wasn't for 2115 and 2117. It was for another property that we're working on. But when I was there, the chief did come to me and tell me that this property needs to be looked on. And I told him in January, I will be starting the process. But when January came, we got the letter. And when he stated that he never said that, I never spoke to, I spoke to the secretary. And she's the one that informs me I cannot get a permit while the buildings are under a list of demolition. Once I'm out of demolition, then I can get a permit. That's what's been holding us.
Thank you.
Mr. Miser.
Regarding what was just said, where, if there is, while it's on this list, or if it's approved, what impacts that has. I also wonder, if we would approve the ordinance, does that jeopardize the funding that you could secure?
That I can secure? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. If we would move forward and approve this tonight, would that jeopardize your ability to have funding to move forward with this project?
No, the funding is already there.
Okay. You already have the money. Okay.
I already have the funding. I can even show like the funding came in, funding way, like the funding is there.
Ms. Scales, did you have a question?
I had more a comment. That's why I just put my hand down, because it's not a question specifically for Miss Joycelyn. And I know that you said that if it's a question that we have for her.
Yeah.
And I don't.
Okay. Well, then we'll circle back to you once we get to deliberation again. Any other questions for Ms. Jocelyn? Do you have a question for us? Is that what your hand's up?
Well, yes. So going back to the escrow and everything, my question was, I think somebody mentioned as far as there's layers of step on the grants. I was gonna ask if I was given the 90 days, I don't know how long the grant takes before it's been approved or disapproved or lost of the grants, I should say. If those works are done, is that enough securing on your point as far as not demolishing the place? Or is there, I guess I'll have to speak to a legal lawyer where it's like, okay, if this is not done, I understand that it'll be under my responsibility. I don't know. I'm just trying to find ways where I can still be responsible of the situation, but start the work type of thing.
Yeah, I think
Did that make sense?
it does. And I mean, I don't know if I can give a 100% answer to that, but I do think that what I have heard in our discussion tonight that we've had is that we are all very sympathetic of your situation. I think we all would rather see these places, these buildings, these structures renovated and have thriving businesses in them than we would to see them torn down into grass or gravel lots. That being said, I think there also is the recognition that we've been dealing with these properties. They are in pretty bad condition and we've been dealing with them for a long time. So I think if there was a concerted effort to show, so let's just say things do go forward with the demolition process from tonight, just hypothetically speaking, I think that that council would be very quick to stop that process if it was started. If a concerted effort was shown, because our desire would be for those properties to be flourishing structures for the community.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to know that I can still invest more money and show you guys that it could be done and it will be done, and trying to stop this process. Because before, in my knowledge, I understood that I was on the free zone. I can't do nothing until this meeting is done. And if it's stated that it will be demolished, and that's it, and that's what I got out of it.
Yes,
just speaking to.
It's a great question. Chief Wilhelm, are you able to confirm that yes, even if we move forward with the demolition vote, that she is able to still get building permits to do some of the necessary work to get it off the demolition list?
Yes, again, the resolution is not, it's just approving the legal clearance that the borough is clear to demolish the property based on the legal requirements of the ordinance. But we've never stopped anybody from applying for a building permit or receiving one. And I didn't know that this conversation allegedly occurred between her and Miss Amos. But nonetheless, Miss Amos did give her the building permit applications, which is indicative that we will take it. We would always like to try to survive, keep the buildings in place and have them rebuilt versus demolish them, because it's costing taxpayer money and it's taken away from our tax base. So yes, absolutely. There is nothing prohibiting her from moving forward, and we will work in whatever way we can to make that happen in good faith.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for confirming that. Any other questions for Mr. Dumuna?
No other questions, but just again, thank you for being willing to get back on. And obviously, if you want to stay on and listen to the rest of the discussion, you can drop out of the Zoom call and still listen to it too through the YouTube link or whatever. I don't know what the formal process is for the Zoom call, but
thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, let's, Mr. McTiernan, do we technically have to do anything to reopen this motion because we've kind of been deliberating about it, even though it's not back on the table?
No, I just think somebody has to make the motion. I think you just postponed it till the end of the meeting, and no, you can just have somebody make a motion to bring it back for action.
I'll make a motion to revive our discussion regarding the demolition action from earlier.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor to continue this conversation, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion is back on the table. Ms. Scales, you had a comment that we wanted to queue up.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody, honestly, for taking the time to seriously consider this. I haven't seen this prior to us, where we seriously take the time to consider all of the factors that are involved, including the factors of the actual owner of the property. I've never seen a council member leave a meeting to go and get the residents to bring them back to the discussion. So I really do want to give us a round of applause for actually being those type of leaders for the Board of Swissvale and giving Ms. Jocelyn here a chance. I'm very proud of us in this moment, to be completely honest. And that's the only comment I had to share, to be completely honest, that I'm really happy to see that we took our time with this and we're really considering everything involved before just rushing to a decision.
Thank you, Ms. Scales. Mr. Miser.
I'll keep it brief. I echo Ms. Scales' thought. I really appreciate the discussion around this. I appreciate the respectful tone of it, and everyone, doing their best to talk this through. I'm just going to put it out there. I am still going to be a no vote. I believe that if we offered the property owners in 2018 a chance and delayed the demolition, we deserve to offer these owners a chance, because I wasn't there for the hearings in 2018, but everything that has come out of what I've seen tonight is the very definition of good faith. She has offered financial documents. She has offered, all the information she has, and I cannot in good conscience, even if a vote of yes tonight means that, the demolition necessarily will not move forward, I cannot in good conscience vote yes on this. So I will still be a no tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Miser. And I'll just say I'm the opposite. I'm still a yes for that very reason, that it is not a done deal through this process. So there are still 2 steps along the way that we can derail this if we choose to change our mind on it. So that being said, I'm going to, at this point in time, call the question, since we had Mr. Miser and myself speak from 2 different briefly positions on this. I'd like to do a roll call vote, because I do know this is something that is very, it's clear that we're a split. Yes, Ms. Salisbury.
Before we do that, is there any consideration to passing an amended version of this resolution that would note that it could be rescinded? Or are you only interested in taking a vote as read or as it's written?
I'm open to a motion, but I think it's and I'm would be open to that motion, but I think it would be one of the other members who have expressed the opposition, if they are willing to make an addendum on the motion. We've already heard Ms. Scales is a no on that. I don't know if she's changed her mind in the conversation that has ensued, but is there any of the other 5 who would be open to that, an addendum?
Could you go back and read exactly what the motion says? I don't have it on my screen here.
I'll read it.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I move to approve resolution 23-03, declaring the structures located at 2115 and 2117 Noble Street as dangerous buildings and ordering their demolition under the authority of ordinance 90-8 of the Borough of Swissvale.
So we're actually voting on demolishing it tonight. We're not just voting on securing the funds, if I understand that.
We are voting on the legal clearance to demolish.
Okay.
At which point then we would be able to get a contract from the county, and Mr. McTiernan and Batchy, correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, get a contract from the county, which then we would vote to put it out to bid and then vote to accept a bid. And those 2 positions are the times where we could say, you know what, progress has been made. So we are gonna no longer put it out to bid, and then the money we'd basically tell the county we're done. We don't need the money anymore. If we need a little bit more time, we put it out to bid. We could always cancel that bid or not accept any bids at that process. Until we accept the bid, this building is there's no contract that this building is going to officially be demolished. Am I accurate in that, Mr. McTiernan?
I think that states it very clearly and accurately.
Mr. Price, does that answer your question? Ms. Salisbury.
So I was just going to add on to that. Perhaps it's not necessary to add other wording because it's, this is not the end. This is not the last step. This is step 1 of 3 of getting the building demolished. So at some future day in a meeting, there would be a vote to put it out to bid. So if at that point there had been work done on the building such that people felt comfortable that they didn't want to tear it down anymore, you just don't put it out to bid. You just vote no on the bid. And then maybe there hadn't been work done then, but there's still, people still feel maybe it'll still happen. So we put it out to bid and then, oh, you know what? They did work on the building. We're not going to move forward with demolishing it. So let's just not, let's not accept the bid. We can reject the bid. So we have 2 more opportunities on council to say no to this. You can vote no. So you could vote yes tonight to putting it, saying that you want to have it demolished because it's been on the demo list for years, really. So you could vote yes to demolishing it, but you could still vote no to put it out to bid to keep it from going and being demolished. And you could still vote no yet a 3rd time to not accept the bid. So we could approve it as it's written and you still have 2 more votes to vote no if we feel that she's made sufficient progress to merit that.
Thank you, Ms. Salisbury. Mr. Miser.
So it's my understanding that at least from what I've gathered from the discussion, is the majority of the push to move forward with a yes vote tonight is just because of the concern surrounding losing the $60,000.
I believe you're accurate in that, yes.
Okay. I mean, in looking at a possible amending, would it be feasible? Would we jeopardize the funding if we would say that we will not put it out to bid until after June 1st or something? I'm just throwing an arbitrary date out there, that we would not even move forward with doing the bidding until that time had elapsed. Would that also still jeopardize the funding?
Mr. Batchy, what do you think?
That's kind of hard to say because, if you pass the resolution tonight, then I pass that on to the county. That Mr. McTiernan will give me the legal clearance letter. I pass that on to the county. Then they have to create the contract, and then only after the contract's created do we then prepare bid specifications. Council votes to put it out to bid, et cetera, et cetera. So it's hard to say if you put a date on it, where it's going to go. But I think if you put a date, if you say that, Ms. DiDamona is here and, she hears the conversation, I think she hears that everyone wants to work with her and if, that it will not be demoed as long as she's making progress and moving forward continuously. So, I mean, I don't think I don't know that personally that you have to put a date on it, for the county's sake. About worrying about losing the money.
But I appreciate the suggestion, Mr. Miser. I don't know if your hand is still up there, or if you want to say more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm a new member of council. I know there's loopholes that have to be jumped through and things that have to be done, but it troubles me to vote in favor as the resolution is worded, to approve the demolition, which I know I'm not technically approving the demolition right now, but if I'm just being completely transparent with the council and with the public, it troubles me to approve that given the situation right now.
Well, if you read the motion, you're making a resolution to declare it a dangerous structure and ordering the demolition. But there's a process to demolish, which we already talked about. So, just because you're doing that like this, they're not going to be on the ground tomorrow. There's no contractors involved. There's no anything. The biggest thing is it's the legal clearance to declare it a dangerous structure. But then we have a several month process to get to the next step here anyway.
And Mr. Miser, to your question, I'd be totally amenable to a date. I mean, something that came to my mind was May 15th, because that gives a little bit over 100 days and still puts us probably within a window of making sure that if we went through with it, if we felt the need to go through with it, that the funding would be executed before the next disbursement in the fall. Again, kind of a somewhat less arbitrary date, but still a date that is somewhat arbitrary out there. Does someone want to amend the motion as such? Okay, hearing nothing, then
Yes, I can. I'm sorry. I was just pulling it
That's
back
okay.
up because I was looking at the affidavits that they had signed because they actually signed an affidavit acknowledging that it's already been declared a public nuisance. So I just wanted to make sure people understand that when they purchased the building, they actually signed something that said, we acknowledge that we understand it's already been declared a public nuisance because it's been that way for years ago. Okay, so please help me workshop this. So, and then I'll make a motion, okay? If people are amenable to that. So currently says I move to approve resolution 23-03 declaring the structures located at 2115 and 2117 Noble Street as dangerous buildings and ordering their demolition under the authority of ordinance 90-8 of the Borough of Swissvale. Do we want to put something like comma contingent upon?
I think it was what Mr. Miser was suggesting is that we add that we would not go to bid. We would not put the demolition out to bid before a specific date. Is that accurate, Mr. Miser?
Yeah, just that we would afford the 90 days to show that work has been done and that there would be no vote to bid that demolition until those 90 days were afforded.
It prevents us from, it would prevent something like, all right, we let this go through and then 30 days we could send it to bid and then we just kind of slip that in there and be like, oh.
And I mean, and also, you know, to be honest, my concern is if we find out, which I don't know if this is the case, but if we find out that, oh, we're going to lose the $60,000 if we don't get this done in so many days, that then also we're stuck in a tough spot.
Yeah.
And I don't want us to get stuck in something like that.
So if I add on, I'm typing this up in Word. So am I correct in typing up what you're saying as with the understanding that there will be no vote to bid the demolition until, and then I just typed into Google, what is 90 days from now? That's Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023. Does that reflect what you're suggesting?
So we would have a voting meeting on Wednesday, May 3rd. I wouldn't want to see it brought up until the following agenda meeting.
June 7th.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
Wednesday, June 2nd or 7th, you said? 7th, 2023.
And I just want to make it, I appreciate these efforts. I don't know that it's going to sway my vote, but I certainly would vote no. I certainly would vote no as it's worded right now.
Okay, I'm going to paste this into the chat just so that everybody can see it because I can't share my screen. I don't think I have authority to do that.
Okay, so you are making this amendment to the motion. Is there anyone that would like to second that motion? So it becomes the motion that we are now deliberating over.
Or were people wanting to speak before we did that?
Well, I think you're making this motion. We need to kind of either approve that, reject it, and then we'll get back to discussion.
That's right. You have to vote on the amendment.
It hasn't been seconded yet.
We kind of have to see it before we can second it, don't
Well,
we?
she just put it in the chat.
Oh.
So it would be tacked on at the end. So instead of a period at the end of the motion, it would be comma with the understanding that there will be no vote to bid the demolition until after Wednesday, June 7th, 2023.
I would say until after Tuesday, June 6th, because if we say after Wednesday, June 7th, then you can't actually vote on it until June 8th.
There you go. Okay, so never mind, with the understanding that there will be no vote to bid the demolition until after Tuesday, June 6th, 2023. Okay, so updated that and just.
Okay, so Abigail has made that motion. Would someone like to second it? I'll second it, just so we can keep going. I can do that, Mr. McTiernan, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so that is now the motion that we are discussing. Mr. Price, go ahead. Ms. Scales, and then I got to call this question. I tried to call it earlier. We're going to go back and do it again. Mr. Price.
Yes, I would maybe go in a different direction. What is, when do we normally have to put it out for bid for? I mean, what's our normal deadline? Mr. Batchy?
Well, there's no normal deadline on it, on the
Okay.
projects. This is just, the money needs to be spent by, October or November would be. They didn't put a firm deadline in the letter, but that's my guess. They want it spent. I know they want it spent by the time the new awards come out. I mean,
Okay, I was going to suggest that maybe we could put a deadline saying that we approve this motion with the stipulation that if the property owner is able to place X amount of money into escrow by a certain date, with agreement of her counsel and our solicitor, that the demolition won't continue.
Well, I mean, I think that's a great suggestion, Bill, but I think the motion, the way it's worded, allows for that. It gives flexibility for there to be some of those negotiations between, Mr. Batchy and the parties involved to figure some of those things out. And if we feel like,
I'm just trying to walk a tightrope. I don't want us to hurt, to lose the 60,000 on one hand, but on the other hand, I want to give the property owner every possible chance to cure the situation. And I didn't know if June 7th was going to jeopardize that 60,000. If that was extending it too long, that's what I was wondering about.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Ms. Scales.
I just want to let you guys know I'm not voting in support of this amendment as it is. I am concerned to vote and approve any motion deeming this property as unsafe and for demolition, understanding the facts that there is that have come before us this evening, understanding this is a new owner and all the steps that has been taken to do whatever is necessary so it can come off the demolition list. I understand that $60,000 is on the table, but it sounds like this is money that was lent to us. This was not ours to keep. It was ours to use if we had to use it to demo this building. And from the sounds of things, it sounds like Ms. Joycelyn is trying to put this building in a position that is not the case, and that we'll continue to receive taxes that she's paying on this building. So even with the amendments as it stands, I will not be voting to approve this motion.
Thank you, Ms. Scales. I'll make the last comment just to kind of, again, provide both sides before I call the question. I am voting in favor of this motion because, as Ms. Jocelyn has said, once she asked for 90 days. This keeping this in the process affords her more than the 90 days. It ends up being like 125 days potentially for her to make a concerted effort on this. And then at that point, we can just decline to put it to bid. So I am in favor of continuing this way. And we have had a lot of conversation about this. I echo the comments that Ms. Scales and others have said regarding there's been a lot of thought into this, but we are not getting any new information at this point in time. So let's vote. I'm going to do a roll call vote in alphabetical order. So Ms. Alfonso Wells, I apologize, but you were first.
And so it goes. No.
Mr. Miser.
No.
Mr. Price.
Darn, I'm completely on the fence on this one. I would say that since we're not going to vote on demolition until after June 7th, that gives us months to work with this.
After June 6th,
I would say yes.
Okay, just for clarity, after June 6th, we would vote on it potentially on June 7th, just to clarify that. And you said yes, is it still a yes?
Under those terms, as long as I know that we've got a couple months that this property owner can save this.
Okay, that's a yes for Mr. Price. Ms. Salisbury?
Yes.
Ms. Scales?
No.
Ms. Stribling?
Yeah, it's a tough one for me too. Because still want to secure, knowing that we can still have that 60,000, and that could possibly, if something happens, that they can't get it renovated, and I'm gonna go yes, because we still need the security of making sure we have the funds and making sure if she is truly what she's saying that she's going to do, then she's going to get the work done. So we won't even have to worry about that.
Thank you, Ms. Stribling. Is a yes. I am a yes, and my calculations, that is 4 yeses and 3 nays. Am I correct, Mr. McTiernan? Anyone listening to that?
Yes, I was keeping track
Okay.
of that. Accurate, 4-3 adopted.
So the motion passes. Ms. Didamono, the property is still on the list for demolition at this point in time. But as I shared earlier, I think we have the unanimous support of council that we would gladly take that off before June 7th. If you follow through with what you said you're going to do over the next 90 days to make a concerted effort to concerted progress on that building. All right. Thank you very much. Let's go back to our reports. We are on report number 3, which is the building report. Mr. Price. Nothing? Is that?
I'm sorry, I'm unmuting. I know that they're starting to move tomorrow on Groundhog Day, I believe, to move to the new building. And I'm afraid that they're going to move everything on Groundhog Day and go to sleep and wake up and everything's going to be back in the building again. But nothing else. We haven't had any, unless Mr. Bocci has more information. He may have talked to the architect since I have. I don't know.
We do have a meeting next week on the 9th. That'll be what they call page turn meeting, where we're sitting down and going over the page by page. That's our normal meeting date, is on the second Thursday. We will go page by page through the drawings to make sure that the building committee and the staff understands everything that's in the building, because Core has not listened to a lot of things we wanted. A lot of things we've asked for or told them to do or not to do. So this is a standard thing in their design process. So it'll be a good thing to do. So everybody's on the same page on the building committee. And then at that point, after, if they have to make any changes, then not final drawings, but the drawings that have clarity for everyone will be distributed to council to say, this is it. So, and this is what they're going to go forward with the final designs. And that meeting will be with building committee, the architects, and the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers. So everybody with the stake in it will be there.
And will that be in person?
That's in person
for the page turn. Thank you.
And that'll be up at Evans Street.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Batchy. Mr. Price, anything else you want to add? Okay, let's move to item 4, President's Report. I just have 2 things that I wanted to bring up. One is just to let council know and the public know, I have been talking to Mr. Batchy about putting together some policies around finance, and in particular, the way reimbursements work. There was just some things that have come up that I think we need some more to have a policy of how you make check requests, what to do with receipts, the timeliness of those, some of those types of things. So that is something that Finance Committee will be discussing. And then we will be bringing to council at some point in time in the future. Additionally, earlier this week, I believe it was on Tuesday, a project that Ms. Salisbury has been putting together and working very hard on with Green Edge Solutions, which they had been on many months ago with regard to the electric vehicle chargers. We had a very productive meeting with Ms. Salisbury, myself, Mr. Batchy, Duquesne Light, and Green Edge, Mr. Angelero from there. And I feel like we're making some progress there. So there are hopefully over the coming months, we will be able to submit an application for investigating one of the areas that we are looking at to put some curbside electric vehicle chargers. Ms. Salisbury, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that.
I just want to say I'm really excited about doing this. We're going to be among the first communities to have this type of access in our area, and people are making decisions about where they want to live based on whether or not they can charge their vehicles. The top 2 expenses that people tend to make in life is they purchase a home and they purchase their car. So a lot of people are not willing to get rid of their car or change the type of lifestyle they're willing to have in order to live somewhere. So I think people will be increasingly making their decisions about where they want to live based on whether or not they think that they can have the car that they want to have, which in previous generations might have seemed odd, but that's how things are right now. So I'm very excited about this project. I'm very grateful that we have the opportunity to work with the Environmental Justice Zone program, because that's opened up a lot of funding for this project that otherwise would not have been financially possible. And Duquesne Light is also being very helpful in shepherding us along in this process.
Yeah, thanks for those comments. And thanks for your hard work in that project, Ms. Salisbury. I appreciate it. Let's move on to the mayor's report. Mayor Schwartzwalder.
I'll be brief. As I promised last month, I have a list of some of the upcoming events for Swiss Val that are going on. I want to remind everyone that Tuesday, February 7th is the special election. So please get out and vote. You are a registered voter, vote in your same place you always vote in unless you've been instructed otherwise. So that is this Tuesday, February 7th. Saturday.
Mayor Schwartzwalder, sorry, can I just interject just again, if anyone is listening, that with the move of the borough building, if your voting district was in the current municipal building, you will still be in the current municipal building for the February 7th election. Just want to make sure that's clear, that folks know to still report to that building.
Yeah. Saturday, April 8th will be our annual egg hunt at noon at Memorial Field. All are welcome, and there will be more information to follow. Our Parkway flower planting this year will be on May 6th. It is our 27th flower planting, and we are looking to, or I'm looking to redesign the hillside. So look for a new design and come out and help us on May 6th to plant. Our Juneteenth celebration this year will be June 17th at Memorial Field. Stay tuned for updates on that. Swiss Val is turning 125 this year, and we are planning a combined birthday community days for July 29th. And our farmers market is in its 10th season, begins on June 3rd, and we are now approved for a new location, and we are back at Dixon School parking lot. So we are very excited to have a new location, and that will start on June 3rd. And if anyone would like to come to the annual membership meeting for the Enterprise Zone, that is on Tuesday, February 14th at 9:15, and that is at 1913 McCaig Street. All are welcome. And that's my report. Any questions?
Thank you, Mayor Schwartzwalder. Mr. Price.
I was just curious. I didn't know that they was moving back to Dixon. What is the reason for the move?
The location on Noble Street with the closing of the Washington Street Bridge, and there's no restrooms. We've had some complaints about that, and we loved Dixon when it was there, and when they were renovating the school, we had to move. So now that that's all done, we thought it's a good time to open up that conversation and try to get back there. And that's where we're moving to. So.
Oh, thank you. That makes sense. Thank you.
Also, for those who are voting by mail, if you have a mail-in ballot, you need to put it in the mail very soon. So it has to arrive on Tuesday by, I think, 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. But they have also extended hours down at the, Allegheny County of Elections, where you can drive down there and they actually have a little, I don't know, something set up so you can pull up, you can run out and drop off your ballot in person. Everybody has to drop off their ballot in person. If they do that, you cannot send it in with somebody else. So everybody has to bring their own ballot in if that is what you want to do. So I would probably say that if you're thinking about mailing in your ballot, probably tomorrow's the last day you can do it with any assurance that it'll get there by Tuesday. Otherwise, you should try to make the trip downtown to drop that off, or you can take your ballot in to the polling place and get it spoiled so that you can then vote at the polling place. But in order to do that, you have to bring everything. You have to bring the ballot and the 2 envelopes that it goes into. If you're missing something, that causes a problem. So you'd have to bring the whole thing down there to get spoiled so that you can then vote. Very important for everybody to come out and vote.
Thank you, Ms. Alfonso Wells. Any other questions for Mayor Schwartzwelder? All right, thank you. Let's move on to the manager's report, Mr. Batchy.
Thank you. Just a couple quick things. As everyone is aware, the Pittsburgh Regional Transit has proposed dropping the Wilkinsburg to Swissvale section of the P3 that currently originates in Swissvale and goes to Oakland. The public comment period ended today at 5 o'clock. We did submit a letter on behalf of council and the borough explaining our deep concerns with this cut. So just so the community knows we are on board with your concerns. And we did also express our concerns to Pittsburgh Regional Transit. As Mr. Price mentioned before, Groundhog Day tomorrow. I hope it's not over and over, but I have a feeling it could be. But we did start moving a lot of stuff to Evans Street today, or in the last couple of days, and we will tomorrow and Friday, all the computers, copiers, everything, all of our technology gets moved, as well as desks, furniture, everything else. So there will be limited access. The borough building will be closed tomorrow and Friday. There'll be limited access to phones tomorrow. Hopefully that we'll have everything up and running Friday, but there's no guarantee on that. So if you need something, best way to probably is email us for the next couple of days. We'll try to check the email and get back to you if there's any issues we need to address. And the final thing I have is February 20th, Monday, February 20th is President's Day. This is not, and I repeat, not a holiday in Swissvale. So there are no changes to garbage collection, recycling collection, or any other services that we provide to the residents. We do get a lot of calls on holidays that we don't observe. Telling us they didn't pick up my trash because people assumed there was a holiday, so they didn't have to put it out. So just want to make clear that is not a holiday, and there will be no delays to your borough services. That is all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Batchy. Any questions for Mr. Batchy? All right, let's move on to the engineering report, Mr. Ziskow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Other than what is in my written report, I have nothing else to report this evening.
Mr. Ziskow, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have a question for you this week.
Okay.
So myself and Mayor Schwartzwelder were able to walk some of the mountain bike trails that are currently in place on the hillside below Les Getz, heading down to the Cary Furnace Trail, or down to the Cary Furnace. So with that in mind, I am very interested in seeing the proposed walking trail and how that would be. And I saw in your report, you said that those drawings and the specs for that would be coming soon. Any timeline on you when you think that we would be able to see that proposal?
I can actually send a drawing over or a couple of drawings over to the borough within the next couple of days. The layout is complete. Just not to drag things out any longer than it's gone on tonight, but we had to basically redesign about 2/3 of the original walkway that was done previously to my getting involved in it. But we have a good walkway now that runs down along the flat of what would be the old tracks. It runs over to the tunnel in Cary Furnace, going into Cary Furnace, and then we have a walkway coming down from Collingwood, and then of course the other tie-in over on Harriet Street in Rankin. But I have it all designed. I'll make sure that the borough manager has copies of it for everybody, and any changes that you think you want to make in it, feel free to. But the bid documents basically just detail what's on the drawings. The drawings are very detailed, so you'll be able to follow it real well.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. And just kind of as for those who don't know, there are a very well-designed set of mountain bike trails on that hillside behind Les Getz, and it was news to me. And actually, I found out that in October of this past year, over 2,000 people rode those tracks. So it is an asset to our community, and I think, you know, this walking trail can just further bring that focus to that area. So I'm anxious to see that. Thank you, Mr. Zisko.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. Zisko? All right, let's move to the Water Authority report. Ms. Tracy Crombie Collins.
Before I get started, I'd like to thank you for the reappointment. I really am proud of the work that is getting done, and I'm happy to deliver my reports. And I'm actually working on an issue for the fire department now as is going forward. I'll make this brief as we're heading into the 10 o'clock hour. This is the Wilkinsburg Penn Joint Water Authority board meeting for January 24th. Overview for the Swissvale Council. We had our annual board meeting. All of the current officers were retained, as was the solicitor and the engineer. The 2023 calendar was accepted. Our articles of incorporation have been extending the life of the authority have finally been accepted by the state. The Utility Workers of America, AFL-CIO local number 191 approved, and the board approved a 5-year contract. That's an extension. Normally those contracts have been 3 years, so there have been a lot of good work between the authority management and the union members. Effective February 6th, the drive-up window will now close at 4:15 to align with the office closing. This is in part to the new contract, and in part since COVID, the window is just not getting used as it had been, and along with now electronic options for paying. Juneteenth has been added as a holiday, and that is again part of the new contract. The 2021 audit that we reviewed in November was accepted. The Penn Vest lead line replacement program continues. There was a change. The company M. O'Haron that had part of the contract and was actually doing the work in Swissvale has run into issues. So with the approval of the DEP and Penn Vest, the remaining part of their contract has been moved to the other contractor, Jet Jack. So that should get the project back up and running, because I believe Swissvale still has some lead line replacements in phase 1 that need to be completed. Exciting news in phase 2 of Penn Vest. Second grant was applied for. We were submitted in November, and on January 12th, the offer from Penn Vest came in the form of a loan for $3.3+ million that would be in for 30 years at 1% interest, along with a grant of $6.3+ million that would extend the next set of lead line replacements. In my written report that is on file, you'll see how that breakdown worked, but that would include another 100 homes in Swissvale, or I'm sorry, 200, another 200 lead line replacements in Swissvale. So that is very exciting. Now that has not been approved. We're still waiting for paperwork, but we will, the board will then get to vote on that as it gets finalized. Forest Hills and Edgewood, yes.
Oh, sorry. I was just wondering if it would be possible for you to ask them if they could have at least one day where they stayed open later than 4 for people who actually, you know, work later than 4 and would like to try to get in there. I mean, I hate having to pay that little fee that you do online. So I'll take the gas and drive up there. But when they're closing at 4, I can't quite make it. So it is much appreciated if they at least have one day, because I'm sure I'm not the only person in the world that might work later than 4 o'clock or have different hours and would like to get there and pay their bill so that they're not charged that, what is it, $3 fee or whatever it is, the convenience fee for paying your bill online.
I'm not sure, because I pay mine through my checking account, so I don't incur a fee.
Did they change
so I have
that?
my checking, I pay through my pay online through my checking account, so I don't incur that fee. I understand that we don't process credit cards, and that's why that fee is there. The issue of the window has been a long debate at the authority long before I had arrived. It is a union job. It is tied to the contract. There has been a lot of problems with assigning somebody there, and it is an overtime issue. So at this point, I do not see that happening. We understand it's a customer service issue. We are in the process of, we have just in this month's January's meeting approved new computer system that is supposed to help improve customer service. So hopefully some more improvements will come along that. But at this time, I don't see that changing. And as I said, it is tied to the contract. As I continue with my report, there was a thank you to the management and the workers that were out when we had the bitter winter, the bitter weather over around Christmas time. There were some breaks. I came to understand that on Yost Boulevard up near the KFC, water was 10 inches, freezing 10 inches high, causing some real traffic concerns. Chairman Simon thanked the authority and the members getting out there and working through that. And unfortunately, more bitter weather to come in the upcoming months, so that may happen again. Other business was conducted. All our documents are available online, and there were 111 mainline breaks system-wide since the last board meeting, which had been in November. And again, my report on file shows those issues that impacted Swissval. And again, if you have or see any water issues, please call the authority at 412-243-6200. I'd make an additional comment that I will also be attending the ALOM conference come in April, since I have been reappointed. And I just appreciate that reappointment, and that is my report. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you for your report. All right, let's move on to item 9, solicitor's report.
Mr. President, this evening I have nothing to add to the agenda items. And most of the items we've been working on together are litigation and personnel, and so I don't have anything for the public meeting to report.
Great, thank you. Before we adjourn, is there any announcements that anyone would like to make?
I just appreciate everybody who had to sit through everything just to get to them at the end. And they didn't really get to say anything except to the end, Tracy and Bob, and then all the other people who were on here who actually just have to stay throughout the whole thing. And they only had one little part to say, or maybe didn't get to say anything, but they're here anyway. Totally appreciate you. And I want to say a big thank you to my fellow council people, because we have managed to have a meeting where we're not hating each other by the end of it. I mean, I'm sure we're all tired, but look at that. Nobody's having that angsty feeling by the end. We're not going to hang up on each other. So I will just leave it at that and say good job for all of us. Can I motion? I motion
Sure.
to end the meeting at, what time is it?
10:06.
10:06 p.m.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? See you later.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
Aye.
Good night.